In this unforgiving world, your entire future is locked in stone the exact moment you turn 16. A cold cardinal presides over the awakening ceremony, neatly sorting kids into their destined stations in life. Some lucky bastard just lucked into a C rank magic amplification talent, guaranteeing a cushy life. For most others, though, it is a depressing slide down into mediocrity. That terrified wreck is Kellen, and he has got a damn good reason to be sweating bullets. He is actually a modern guy from Earth who got himself flattened by a truck while staring blindly at his phone. 16 long years of growing up as an impoverished noble in this medieval hellhole left him with endless regret. Note to self, never browse social media while crossing a busy street, or you might end up reincarnated. Luckily, his only real friend Julia steps up to rub his back and offer some comforting words. She reminds him his barren parents' bloodline should at least secure him a decent tier. He has to bite his tongue to keep from shouting that he is not scared at all, just desperate to break free. Once this rite is finished, he can finally pack his bags for the Royal Academy and ditch his toxic household. Before he can savor the fantasy any longer, the dreaded cardinal barks out his full name. 16 years of misery, and the man gets a participation trophy. Kellen shuffles up to the stone, looking so starved and frail that a stiff breeze could snap him in half. The cardinal openly glares at his pathetic, unnoble appearance with utter contempt. Following harsh orders, he forces every muscle in his aching body to relax and chases the ambient energy. A soothing warmth floods his veins as raw power starts trickling in. The stone flashes, spitting out a C rank talent alongside a combat ready knight class. It is a gamble of a power that completely depends on RNG to decide if it is absolute garbage or god tier. The Cardinal announces the verdict with zero fanfare, calling it a C rank ability with wildly erratic utility. If Lady Luck hates you, this perk is basically a glorified paperweight. Kellen's heart sinks right down into his boots after hearing the mediocre review. He endured 16 years of absolute garbage just to pull a mid-tier roll. Suddenly, a crisp notification chime echoes directly inside his skull, dragging a holographic status window into view.
Congratulations, host. Today you have gained Strength Attribute Point 1.
Turns out the Awakening came bundled with a cheat tier HUD that breaks down his exact builds and elements. His wind talent was absolute garbage all along, which explains why his sword training felt like pulling teeth. With his stats finally out in the open, he lingers by the exit, waiting for Julia to finish up before setting off for the academy. The real game starts right now. Going back to that wretched estate was suicide. With my pathetic C-grade talent newly awakened, that toxic stepmother would hunt me down and finish me off in a heartbeat. Born to a minor baron with a gaggle of concubines, I initially had decent meals and actual prospects. But the moment my real mother died, a smiling sociopath seized total control. She played the doting saint to the baron while weaponizing the other 20 kids against me. I became the designated punching bag for everyone's daily frustrations and sadistic whims. By age 6, I was doing brutal manual labor, eating scraps and absorbing endless beatings. Reader, the Baron wasn't clueless. He just didn't give a single flying fuck about a spare kid. Escape was impossible without her permission, so I learned to bury my rage and play the compliant dog. Every ounce of humiliation just fueled my absolute obsession with survival. If not for Julia, my loyal friend who dragged me out here for this awakening ceremony, I probably would have rotted away in that cellar months ago. She dashed over with a huge grin, practically vibrating with energy as she blurted out the incredible results of her test. She scored a monstrous B-grade ice crystal bloodline that even a high-ranking cardinal praised. I tried to look happy for her, but my face muscles were entirely out of practice. When she suggested marching back to celebrate with the family, I slammed the brakes. Going back there meant a slow, miserable death. Instead, I dropped a bombshell. I was enrolling straight into King's Academy through the papal court. Talk about leaping straight out of the frying pan and into an active volcano. Julia went completely pale. She knew that academy was a literal meat grinder, where class warfare and raw human malice ran totally unchecked. I cut off her protests before she could start. This was my only shot at a future, and I wasn't about to let sentimentality drag me back into chains. She watched me vanish without looking back, hit by the crushing realization that we might genuinely never see each other again. Cue the tragic exit music. With the ceremony wrapping up, a dozen other ambitious youths clustered around the plaza, all desperate to hitch their wagons to the papal court's rising star. The white-robed cardinal who handled our awakenings strode back out to address the crowd with an expression that screamed entirely untrustworthy. He offered us a warm, welcoming smile, except it looked less like a blessing and more like a skinwalker sizing up its next meal. The cardinal splits the assembled kids into two groups, offering a glowing smile to the four fools stepping toward the academy route. Kellen instantly sees right through the holy man's act, knowing that volunteering for this deadly military school is practically a suicide mission. He herds us into a back room under the guise of generous rewards, trading our lives for his own political advancement. What a swell guy! I size up my new companions for this death march, noting the clumsy patches on their clothes and their hollow, starved cheeks. The Cardinal leads us down into a dreary armory crammed with rusted, basic gear meant for cannon fodder. I rummage through the garbage pile of blades, desperately searching for something that won't snap on my very first swing. I finally settle on a halfway decent iron sword, resigning myself to whatever pathetic odds this weapon buys me. Nearby, a frail girl bypasses the bulkier gear to snatch up a surprisingly sharp dagger that actually looks properly forged. The other two guys wisely grab long spears, proving they possess at least two brain cells between them for reach advantage. With our cheap toys secured, the grinning bastard marches us down to a miserable communal holding cell for the night. We squeeze into a reeking room already packed tighter than a tin of sardines, with other poor bastards facing the exact same fate. Knowing I'm stuck with these people, I decide to break the ice and drop my full identity right out of the gate. My announcement drops jaws across the room because commoners don't get surnames around here, let alone starving peasants. Alan speaks up next, admitting his massive family of 14 drove him straight into this nightmare just to clear an extra mouth. Mason chimes in with a nearly identical sob story of 10 siblings and empty kitchen cupboards pushing him toward the church. Lena rounds out the circle, revealing she fled an arranged marriage to some ancient, decrepit codger 50 years her senior. We cram together in a grim, freezing corner of the room, desperately trying to survive the night. Socializing wasn't on my mind when everyone else looked just as miserable as me.
Right as midnight struck, my eyes snapped wide open to a glowing text box floating in the dark. For fuck's sake, 16 years of misery and the universe finally hands out a participation trophy. Congratulations, host, you have gained one strength attribute point today.
While ordinary mortals gain a single pathetic point a year, my cheat code hands me one every single day. If I just stay patient, all this suffering is going to turn straight into overwhelming power. A sudden rush of raw muscle power surged through my limbs, making me itch to test my new strength on someone. But I forced myself to stay calm. Showing off right now would get me killed. Dawn broke early, dragging us out into a massive, sprawling crowd of hundreds of kids outside the church. We lined up like cattle to receive our glorious breakfast of sawdust bread and a splash of milk. I wolfed down half my disgusting rock bread and stashed the rest away inside my rags for an emergency. Reader, he did not trust these organizers an inch, and neither should anyone else. They shoved us into open-air cargo wagons like crates of cheap merchandise for a brutal, teeth-rattling ride. We weren't kids anymore. We were just cargo being hauled to the slaughterhouse. The propaganda painted this academy as a dream factory, but reality was a meat grinder where 10,000 enter and maybe one survives. Even the survivors crawl out completely hollowed out and cruel. Noble brats get protected escorts and custom pampering to farm-free prestige, while poor kids get thrown to the wolves. My own deadbeat dad spent a fortune buying safety for the young master next door. Without a roof over our wagons, the brutal noon sun baked us alive without mercy. I had to rip a strip off my shirt just to keep my scalp from blistering off my skull. We caught a brief break at noon thanks to the camp's water mage, who needed us alive to avoid wasting valuable assets. Everyone scrambled to weave pathetic leaf umbrellas just to block the blinding rays. By late afternoon, rattling around in that unpaved cart had completely pulverized my weak body. Every single bone in my frame felt like it was grinding into fine dust. Evening brought a tiny scrap of dried meat alongside our miserable daily bread to keep us from collapsing. I forced the disgusting cardboard rations down my throat with gulps of water.
Midnight rolled around like clockwork, bringing the most beautiful sound in the entire world straight to my ears. Let's hear it again, system. Congratulations, host. You have gained 1 Constitution attribute point today.
Over the past 3 days, my body has undergone some serious upgrades. With an extra point packed into agility, spirit, and constitution, I am feeling fantastic. My fellow passengers, however, are suffering terribly. Without my daily stat bumps, these poor kids look like absolute zombies after just a few days on the road. Mercifully, the seasoned escort captain calls for a much needed break. He orders a half-day rest so everyone can recover before the final push to the academy. We gather in a tight circle to pass the time and compare notes. Lena nervously voices what we are all thinking, wondering how harsh King's Academy will actually be. Alan shrugs off the dread, claiming we will at least get fed there. Mason nods along, completely thrilled that we have plenty of rations on the trip for once. I nod along with their simple mindset before steering the conversation toward our unique gifts. It is time to find out what kind of combat tools we are dealing with. Alan proudly reveals his physical prowess, boasting a strength enhancement perk. Mason chimes in with his precision gift, claiming his aim is unmatched. Lena hesitates for a long moment before whispering her secret. She admits to holding a concealment power that dampens her personal aura. Frankly, I think her skill is insanely useful for an assassin, but the grading system here is clearly cooked. For fuck's sake, who rates that a mere D grade? Alan and Mason just stare blankly, completely blind to the immense tactical value of stealth. To these peasant boys, a flashy punch beats creeping in the shadows. They all assume my attribute allocation talent is hot garbage, since it supposedly only grants 1 point a year. Let the fools keep underestimating me.
Another 3 days fly by in a flash. My daily stat lottery drops another point into Constitution, then Strength, and finally lands on a brand new category.
My luck attribute hits 4 points today. I have no idea if that is high, but sitting around waiting to trip over a legendary treasure sounds like a great hobby. Meanwhile, the captain has been quietly watching me like a hawk. He notices what the others are too blind to see. My physical condition is steadily improving. We have been bumping along this endless dirt road for nearly a week now. I just want to know when we finally reach our destination so I can prepare. He checks my entry files again and frowns in utter bewilderment. While everyone else is falling apart, I am somehow getting stronger every single day. Another grueling week crawls by on the road, but Kellen's routine is entirely different from the rest of the miserable travelers. He steadily pours points into his 4 main attributes, watching his physical vessel transform into something far beyond normal human limits.
His updated status screen reveals a terrifying upward trajectory, even stretching his expected mortality from 62 to 69 years.
While everyone else drags their half-dead bodies through the dirt, our boy here is practically going for a morning jog. Lena finally hits her absolute breaking point, realizing her inferior female constitution means she's going to perish on this godforsaken trail. Desperation overrides her pride, and she sidles over to Kellen, hoping against hope that he'll share his secret survival method. Alan and Mason glare daggers from across the camp, ready to brand anyone who associates with the disgraced noble as a traitor. She opens her mouth to whisper her desperate plea, terrified of the social fallout, but terrified of dying even more. Alan immediately sticks his nose in, shouting loudly enough for the whole camp to hear just to make sure things stay awkward. Lena freezes in absolute horror, knowing these petty commoners will spread vicious rumors about her the second they get the chance. Kellen watches the psychological warfare unfold without blinking an eye. 16 years of misery makes you immune to teenage peer pressure. She finally blurts out the question burning in everyone's minds. Why the hell isn't he suffering like the rest of them? Alan and Mason lean in so hard their eyes practically bulge out of their skulls, desperately fishing for a cheat code. Kellen casually invents a bullshit story on the spot, claiming a rare adaptation talent lets his body instantly adjust to any harsh environment. Nearby, the escort captain overhears the excuse and nods in quiet understanding, completely buying the convenient cover story. Alan's face twists into an ugly mask of pure jealousy as he realizes there's no secret technique for him to steal. Reader, he did not take it well. I felt a sudden, piercing glare drilling into the back of my head. When I spun around, I caught Alan staring daggers at me with pure, unabashed hatred. 10 long days on the road melted away in a blur of relentless physical conditioning. Every single one of my core stats ticked upward, pushing me closer to genuine human strength. My ribs stopped sticking out like a xylophone, and I actually gained enough height to leave my short pants looking awkward. Even my old bully Alan no longer had a height advantage over me. The rest of the caravan was drowning in exhaustion, their spirits completely crushed by the endless trudge. Nobody expected anything out of the ordinary until a blood-curdling howl ripped through the dark woods. A wolf's cry shattered the silence, instantly waking the camp into absolute panic. The escort captain scrambled to his feet, barking orders to form a defensive circle before we were all torn to shreds. People stampeded in blind terror, trampling right over each other in the rush for safety. Poor Lena got knocked flat on her back, taking a brutal stomp straight to the gut that left her gasping in agony. I couldn't just stand there and watch her get squashed in the dirt. I grabbed her arm, hoisted her straight up, and shoved her toward the relative safety of the inner circle. Just as I turned to run, Alan lunged from behind with a vicious shove aimed straight at my spine. The bastard was actively trying to murder me in the middle of a monster attack. He thought his strength enhancement talent made him untouchable, but he severely underestimated my stats. I planted a vicious kick right in his chest that sent him flying backward into the dirt. Karma caught up to him instantly, reader. Before he could even push himself up, a massive magical wolf clamped its razor-sharp jaws deep into his shoulder, tearing open his flesh. I bolted past the chaos and dove straight into the protective circle of guards just in time. Say what you want about bad timing, but karma really does work fast when you're a petty piece of shit. 40 to 50 gigantic magical wolves prowled just beyond our lines, circling like predators sizing up a buffet. This wasn't a random encounter. These beasts were hunting with terrifying discipline. Even the veteran escort captain looked like he swallowed a brick, recognizing the alpha wolf's terrifying combat level. If this coordinated pack rushed us all at once, our fragile human wall wouldn't hold. Without warning, the entire pack launched themselves at our perimeter in a coordinated surge. 2-meter-long beasts slammed into our defense line with bone-shattering force. Our guards dug their heels in and held the line through sheer grit and heavy steel. Every shield bash and spear thrust bought us another few precious seconds of life. Meanwhile, the alpha wolf watched from the sidelines like a general studying a chessboard. It picked apart our formation piece by piece, hunting for the exact moment to break our defenses wide open. That wretched Wolf King belts out another piercing howl, driving its entire pack into a frenzied state of absolute bloodlust. The escort captain curses under his breath, realizing right then and there that we are in for a goddamn bloodbath. Cowards freeze up and huddle right in the vulnerable center of the mob, completely ignoring the captain's roaring orders to scatter. For fuck's sake, bunching up like sitting ducks is a stellar strategy if your goal is becoming wolf kibble. I stay put since the frontline idiots are absorbing the initial carnage for me. And let's be real, running now is suicide. These beasts aren't planning to dine and dash either. They'll slaughter every last soul before dragging the carcasses away. The slaughter kicks off immediately as a guard takes down a wolf, only to get his throat ripped out in a single horrific snap. The air instantly fouls with a suffocating cocktail of fresh blood, panic sweat, and warm piss. A howling beast breaches the huddled mass and starts chewing through screaming kids like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. The absolute cowards just freeze in sheer terror, completely forgetting they even have limbs to defend themselves. I step up, drive my blade straight through a lunging wolf's eye, and yank it free without feeling a single ounce of panic. Turns out these giant mutts are made of flesh and bone just like the rest of us, which makes them entirely killable. I yell out to the trembling idiots that these monsters bleed just as easily as we do if they'd grow a spine and fight back. My blunt words somehow spark a dangerous, desperate courage in the kids who were ready to wet themselves a second ago. One of the trembling kids finally unlocks his hidden talent, erupting into a glorious, blinding beacon of pure solar light. Talk about a glow up. The pitch black night instantly turns into broad daylight, stripping the beasts of their stealth advantage. The well trained guards instantly capitalize on the visibility, turning the tables and butchering half a dozen wolves in seconds. The gap in the fight is finally closing, and momentum is shifting right back over to our blood soaked side. The Wolf King snarls in pure irritation, instantly identifying our human flashlight as the main problem threatening its hunt. It vanishes into a dark blur, rocketing across the clearing with terrifying speed to take out the source of the light. Luckily, the captain was babysitting the boss monster the whole time and intercepts the furry freight train right in its tracks. He's been waiting for this exact duel, knowing full well he's the only one here strong enough to trade blows with it. The Wolf King sizes up its heavily armored opponent with murderous respect, recognizing a genuinely lethal threat to its crown. It lunges forward with savage pride, eager to tear apart the strongest meatbag standing in its path. They lock into a brutal, earth-shaking exchange of heavy strikes that creates a literal danger zone nobody dares approach. The air crackles with pure hostility as man and beast trade bone-crushing blows in a masterclass of mutual violence. Despite taking a beating, the giant beast looks genuinely thrilled to finally find a playmate worthy of its terrifying stats. It bites down with savage glee, thoroughly basking in the absolute rush of a high-stakes life-or-death brawl. Surprise, motherfucker! The captain's sneaky adjutant slips past the blind spot and buries a blade deep into the king's tender lower gut. That's what you get for ignoring the trash mob's support staff, you oversized stray dog. A deafening, agonizing howl rips straight from the beast's throat as it recoils from the devastating, traitorous gut stab. The heavy damage is dealt, and the apex predator's invincible aura is officially shattered for good. Driven to absolute fury by the skirmish, the massive Wolf King whips around to target the human who ambushed it. But before it can retaliate, the captain's adjutant leaps forward with a viciously barbed sword. That jagged blade shreds the beast's flesh from the inside out with every inch it moves. Overwhelmed by agonizing pain, the mighty predator's legs give out completely and it crashes hard to the dirt. Seizing the opening without a shred of hesitation, the captain drives his blade straight into the creature's throat. That merciless thrust ends the Alpha's life once and for all. With their leader dead, the entire wolf pack plunges into sheer suicidal chaos. They begin tearing blindly at anything that moves, turning the forest floor into a bloody meat grinder. When the dust finally settles, only 5 battered members of the guard are left standing. The adjutant pays the highest price among them, losing an entire arm to the frantic melee. The youth corps takes an even heavier hit, leaving barely 30 survivors out of over 100 recruits. Heavy grief hangs over the captain as he collects tokens to return to his fallen men's families. Something stinks about this entire ambush, and the captain knows it. A pack this size shouldn't be able to bypass the patrols, meaning someone high up is either sleeping or actively targeting them. Before breaking camp, the captain calls Kellen over to the center of the clearing. Thanks to his timely heroics earlier, Lena and the remaining recruits look at him with genuine gratitude. The captain makes no secret of his appreciation, openly admitting that Kellen's quick reflexes saved lives. He offers the young recruit any reward he desires for his stellar battlefield contributions. When Kellen plays it cool and shakes his head, the captain offers something far better. He promises to personally teach Kellen a specialized cultivation technique during their rest times. Kellen accepts on the spot without a second thought. After all, the man wields purple lightning magic, which happens to be the exact element Kellen needs to turbocharge his own growth. Night falls quickly over the makeshift camp, and Kellen reports right on schedule to his new mentor. The captain formally introduces himself as Leighton Weisha before getting straight to business. Mr. Weisha explains the core of his lightning breathing method. stressing that lung capacity dictates magic control. Reader, he probably expected the kid to pass out in 30 seconds. Instead, Kellen casually sits there holding his breath for a staggering 3.5 minutes. That transcendent body of his just laughs at normal human physical limitations. Mr. Weisha just stares in absolute disbelief as the kid shatters baseline expectations. For fuck's sake, most adult veterans don't even pull numbers like that on their first try. Before Kellen can even catch his breath, the mentor immediately transitions to the next grueling step. There are no participation trophies here, just pure, relentless training. Mr. Weisha explains that they will reach King's Academy in half a month, meaning Kellen must master all advanced cultivation methods right now to practice independently. The elderly mentor demonstrates the lightning guidance art, a technique designed to temper the physical body with raw electrical energy and forge a true lightning physique. Late night training leaves Kellen utterly exhausted, though Mason and Lena watch him with newfound respect after his heroic leadership during the Demon Wolf attack. Exhausted beyond measure, Kellen falls into an instant heavy sleep, prompting his two loyal companions to pull guard duty all night to protect his belongings. Morning light shocks Kellen awake. For a second, he panics about losing his gear, only to realize he slept completely undisturbed through the entire night. He sits down to an unexpectedly luxurious breakfast fit for the escort captains, loaded with fresh meat and sweetbread to rapidly rebuild his nutrition. Checking his gains from the previous night, Kellen discovers his lightning affinity has skyrocketed to a ceiling level 7 points. For the next 10 days, Kellen devours Mr. Weisha's lessons like a sponge, absorbing complex arcane theories at a frighteningly rapid pace. Even the veteran mentor is left utterly shocked by the kid's monstrous growth rate, quietly resolving to ask an old academy friend to look after him. 10 days of intense training net him massive stat boosts, particularly in spirit, which sharpens his mental focus and drastically cuts down his required sleep time. Thanks to the high-end meals, his previous malnourished frame is completely gone, replaced by a robust, rapidly growing teenage physique.
Name, Kellen Gaza. Occupation, Knight. Age, 16. Level 4. Let's see how our favorite overachiever is stacking up. Cultivation techniques. Gale Sword Technique Level 1. Lightning Guidance Art Level 1. Four-dimensional attributes. Strength 15, Agility 13, Constitution 14, Spirit 18. Elemental affinities: Wind 1, Water 4, Lightning 7, Fire 3, Earth 2, Wood 1, Light 0, Dark 0, Space 0, Time 0. Look at that elemental spread, perfection. Additional attributes: Charm 70, Luck 4, Lifespan 74. Extra talents: Swordsmanship talent 9, Magic talent 4. 16 years of misery and the man is finally cashing out.
His level jumps straight to 4, and thanks to relentless feeding and leveling, he now stands shoulder to shoulder with any normal youth in the region. Surrounded by a horde of starving skeletal recruits, Kellen looks like an absolute movie star. His flawless skin and calm composure make everyone else look like extras from a zombie flick. Before parting ways, Mr. Weisha slips a mysterious wooden card into my hand. He tells me to track down a guy named Quinn once I finally reach the academy grounds. I notice a shady little transaction happening on the side, with Mr. Weisha slipping a heavy pouch to the receptionist. Turns out a little extra bribery goes a long way for good service. Stepping into the lower deck feels like being packed into a floating sauna with 50 miserable strangers. Spending 2 whole days crammed in this foul-smelling box is pure torture. Right when I try to settle down, a surly crew member marches right up and barks my name. He motions for me to get up and follow him out of the suffocating hold. He leads me away from the wretched peasants down into a much nicer, spacious cabin. The air actually has oxygen in it this time, which is a massive upgrade. Peering out through the tiny barred porthole, the sheer emptiness of the endless ocean starts sinking in. There's no turning back now, and escaping this place is totally out of the question. Since moping around won't change a damn thing, I sit my ass down and start grinding my breathing techniques. Might as well level up while everyone else panics in silence. Miles away, Mr. Weisha watches the ship vanish into the horizon with a smug little grin. The old bastard is betting big that my ruthless work ethic will outlive all the flashy prodigies. 2 days of relentless grinding finally pays off as my physique bumps up a couple of points. Turns out prison ship meditation is the ultimate pre workout. The ship finally docks on a gloomy afternoon, and we shuffle out like absolute death row inmates. One poor bastard trips over his own feet and face plants right onto the wood. Stepping onto the solid ground brings a wave of relief until I spot Lena and Mason waiting for me. They look thrilled to see me alive, but keep their voices down out of sheer terror. The island itself looks like the opening level of a horror game, wrapped in a massive, unnatural wall of thick white fog. Something predatory is definitely lurking deep inside that mist. The guide barks orders for everyone to hold hands tightly so nobody gets lost and horribly murdered. The sweaty palms of the person next to me make holding hands an absolute sensory nightmare. We march blindly through the freezing fog and burst out right in front of a colossal, breathtaking cathedral. Talk about a dramatic architectural flex for a training school. The guide drops the final bombshell that this creepy church is our new home sweet home. Tomorrow brings a brutal entrance exam, so we get one measly day to mentally prepare for suffering. Sinister men dressed in eerie white robes arrive to escort the surviving candidates. They quickly assess the reduced numbers following the ambush and lead the group toward their quarters without asking too many questions. Kellen finds himself assigned to a surprisingly decent 8-person dormitory. The room is quiet, and the other 7 occupants keep completely to themselves, paralyzed by anxiety over tomorrow's trials. He claims the final unoccupied bed and pretends to sleep, keeping his guard up. In a place full of hostile strangers, closing both eyes completely is a luxury he simply cannot afford. Sure enough, while he lies half asleep, a shadowy figure creeps up and starts fumbling with his sword. The creep clearly intended to use the blade against him while he was vulnerable. Kellen's eyes snap open with terrifying coldness. He barks a harsh demand, freezing the amateur assassin in his tracks and instantly waking up every other roommate in the quarters. Before the rat can even blink, Kellen detonates a vicious backhand across his face. The sheer kinetic force shatters the skin instantly, leaving a bleeding, mangled handprint. The assailant collapses like a rag doll onto the floor, his face completely wrecked by a single blow. One look at Kellen's raw power completely shatters any remaining courage the kid had. Kellen crouches down and taps the sobbing wreck on the cheek to demand an explanation. Honestly, asking a guy why he tried to steal your weapon after you just caved his face in is peak comedy. The terrified kid stammers out pathetic denials until the sheer terror causes him to wet himself right on the floor. Reader, he did not think his master criminal plan through very well. Disgusted by the mess and the pathetic display, Kellen drags the crying loser to the door and launches him straight out into the hall. Time to reflect on your life choices outside, buddy. Out in the hallway, the humiliated kid nurses his broken face with pure resentment. He wanted to ruin Kellen just because the guy was too handsome and capable, but now he's just pathetic.
Congratulations, host. Today you have gained Strength Attribute Point 1.
Seeing the system reward pop up puts a nice little grin on his face. At least someone appreciates a good beatdown. An extra muscle is always welcome right before a major test. The next morning, an official arrives to herd the candidates out and spots the bruised loser squatting by the door. Officials around here are way too used to hazing to care. They march out into a massive courtyard packed with 4 to 5,000 eager applicants. The sheer scale of the crowd makes it clear just how brutal this selection process will be. A cardinal in immaculate white robes steps up to brief the crowd on the brutal rules. Only the top 1,000 candidates who manage to outlast the 5-day trial will make the cut. Our protagonist, Kellen, gets hit with a rude awakening when the examiner casually drops modern terminology like an obstacle long-distance run for the opening test. Before anyone can catch their breath, the rules change entirely and they are ordered to lock themselves into a rigid, unmoving military posture. An invisible wave of brutal gravity pressure descends upon the crowd, turning a simple standing exercise into an absolute nightmare of endurance. Frail bodies fold instantly under the supernatural load, and the unlucky ones get dragged off into the shadows with zero explanation. Brutal but effective. Kellen manages to weather the storm by sheer grit, watching pampered youths around him shatter like cheap glass under the relentless magical weight. After an agonizing hour and a half, the dust finally settles and the 1,000 survivors are left gasping for air. The chief drops a chilling bombshell, officially stripping these exhausted survivors of their former status as mere slaves. Wait, what kind of school is this? Back at the quarters, 5 beds sit empty, and yesterday's arrogant pest is left whimpering outside. Talk about a swift and merciless karma delivery.
Congratulations, host. You have gained Physique 1 today.
With that boost, his physique skyrockets to 17 points, giving him stamina that leaves ordinary mortals eating his dust. His reward for a stellar performance arrives on a silver platter, literally, featuring a hearty spread while his roommates chew on sadness. Faced with an upcoming obstacle marathon, our boy debates whether dragging a heavy steel sword along for the ride is a stroke of genius or sheer stupidity. Luck smiles on him when he lands in the second group, meaning he gets front row seats to watch everyone else crash and burn first. The track event kicks off, and a literal angel girl with gorgeous feathered wings dominates the lead. Well, guess we know who the church's new pet is. As the 10-kilometer dash unfolds, Kellen suddenly realizes a glaring plot hole in the curriculum. Where the hell are all the squishy spellcasters? Turns out mages get entirely different trials, sparing them from running a marathon. Honestly, fair enough for nerds who can't lift a feather. This assessment is less of a simple sprint and more of a punishing triathlon designed to test every limit. We've got a 1,000-meter mud bath, heavy gravity fields, and flesh-hungry monsters waiting at the finish line. Knowing how fast those beasts move, I strap a heavy sword to my back despite the extra encumbrance. Getting scratched by those creatures means dropping points, and I'm not here to fail. A freakish birdman crosses the finish line in first place with ridiculous ease, leaving the rest of us in the dust. Behind him, the heavy hitters with body-strengthening builds are dominating the second tier. Elemental mages are really struggling out here since their late-game talents haven't awakened yet. Down in the trenches, desperate fools are already tripping and brawling to claw their way into the top 20. The examiner drops his arm and shouts the start command, sending us all surging into action. After a brief sprint, I slam right into the opening trap, a massive, sucking pit of mud. Every single step feels like lifting an anchor as the thick muck tries to steal my stamina. I deliberately dial back my pace because burning out early is a rookie mistake I refuse to make. Of course, some low-tier opportunists spot my tall frame and decide I'm an easy target. Because murder isn't technically allowed, I figure a mild lesson is in order to keep them off my back. Before they can even swing, I draw my sword and channel my electric ki in a blinding flash. Both of their arms get cleanly severed, teaching them a brutal lesson about picking the wrong target. A severed arm in the blink of an eye tends to make the surrounding crowd lose their appetite for a fight. Everyone instantly brands me as a walking nightmare and clears a wide berth. My thunder guiding skill is finally hitting an initial stage of mastery, packing a nasty paralyzing shock. Even better, the residual magic surges straight into my limbs and cranks my attack speed right up. Up on the balcony, the examiners are watching my every move through their magical viewports. They're chatting about how my ridiculous stat distribution luck is finally paying off in spades. I emerge from the swamp muck in third place overall, despite actively pacing myself. My body barely feels fatigued, proving my endurance is already miles ahead of the competition. Under the scorching sun, the leftover mud clinging to my legs starts baking into a crusty, annoying shell. Reader, he did not think through how miserable walking in hardened clay would feel. I quickly catch up to the two leading body enhancement freaks right as we hit the gravity zone. Without missing a beat, I march right past them while the speed-type runner's legs literally buckle under the pressure. While the broken losers get hauled off to God knows where, the Birdman from earlier locks eyes on me. He looks genuinely pissed that I've climbed this high without even breaking a sweat. Kellen tears through the thick mire of the second trial with terrifying speed, leaving the rest of the exhausted competitors in his absolute dust. While other rookies struggle against the punishing gravity fields, our boy crosses the muddy obstacle course in a blistering 12 minutes flat. He wraps up the entire second round in under 40 minutes, putting his overall pacing neck and neck with that annoying bird person from earlier. Section 3 throws a domesticated magic wolf right into his path, but this beast lacks any real bloodlust and poses zero actual threat. With a single swift stroke crackling with purple electricity, Kellen splits the creature's head wide open and keeps right on moving. His cheap weapon takes a beating on the skull split and gets badly chipped, proving that dollar store gear really does let you down. Saga watches from the sidelines in absolute shock, realizing that unlike her, Kellen actually knows how to handle real combat. He finishes the entire brutal course in just 51 minutes, turning heads and making every spectator view him like an absolute Superman. The thin blonde girl named Saga immediately marches over to introduce herself, flashing a weak smile and extending her hand for a shake. They trade names and a formal handshake, with Saga realizing this pretty boy probably crawled out from some deeply messed up noble household. She feels a genuine flutter of affection for the aloof noble and eagerly asks if they can stay in touch as friends moving forward. The clumsy guy who lagged behind during the gravity test somehow rallies, catches up, and snatches a surprising second place finish. The remaining contestants completely lose their nerve against the beasts, turning a simple combat test into a pathetic, panic-filled bloodbath. As the remaining rounds roll out, the brutality scales up drastically, dragging the entire grueling trial past the 2-hour mark. One absolute unit in the third round casually transforms into a walking stone giant, flexing a top-tier talent that screams high rank. Another mystery contestant mirrors Kellen's one-hit kill with terrifyingly refined swordsmanship, proving noble bloodlines aren't the only ones hiding freaks. After the grueling preliminary trials, only 100 fighters remained standing. The top finishers were absolute freaks of nature, with terrifying shape-shifting bloodlines. Even among beasts and monsters, Kellen looked entirely ordinary by comparison. An examiner announced the rules for the third phase, a brutal combat assessment spanning 3 straight days. Instead of random draws, the top champions would be deliberately paired against the lowest qualifiers. Returning to his quarters that evening, Kellen found he had the entire room to himself. Both of his former roommates had completely washed out of the trials. He immediately turned the sudden solitude to his advantage, diving right into cultivating the thunder guiding skill. If the system tests were going to scale up, he needed every ounce of extra power.
Suddenly, a crisp chime echoed inside his mind with a notification that caught him completely off guard. Reader, he did not expect the universe to hand him a masterclass in blade work for free.
Swishing his sword just once after the update, he could instantly feel a staggering shift in his combat comprehension. This wasn't just a minor stat boost, it was an entirely new tier of lethal muscle memory. Dawn broke quickly, bringing 80 remaining combatants to the sprawling arena grounds for a massive elimination wave. 50 separate judges watched like hawks as the bracket matches kicked off all at once. Kellen stepped up to face his first opponent, a sea-level Earth manipulator who ranked 20th in his group. The guy let out an audible sigh of relief, thinking he had lucked out against the weakest human in the tournament. Snarling at Kellen's icy silence, his rival channeled the surrounding Earth mana to coat his body in a defensive mineral crust. Sure, it boosted his armor plating, but it also turned him into a sluggish brick. Before the poor bastard could even swing his heavy blade, Kellen's steel darted straight through his defenses and pierced his gut. It wasn't a fatal strike, but it instantly dropped the arrogant mage into the dirt. As the referee called the match, Kellen casually stripped his defeated foe of his weapon right off the ground. What a gentlemanly way to help a classmate down on his luck, right? His victim nearly vomited blood from pure rage, screaming for the examiner to punish such blatant daylight robbery. Naturally, the officials ignored him and dragged him off the field. Kellen strolled off to catch his breath while watching Saga wrap up another utterly one-sided massacre. The sheer gulf in talent between the top and bottom seeds was painfully wide. The first wave of fights cleared out half the remaining contenders in the blink of an eye. With just 50 people left, the tournament structure narrowed down toward the final selection pool. The rules made it abundantly clear that the Academy only worshipped raw power and let the weak fend for themselves. Round 2 sprang forward instantly, pitting Kellen against the 10th seed of the first group. With 50 survivors left fighting for their futures, Kellen tightened his grip on his newly acquired blade. He was ready to carve his own path right through the noble elite. Another round of the tournament begins, and Kellen faces a much tougher opponent armed with a spear. The guy actually tries to seize the initiative instead of turtling up, which turns out to be a massive mistake. The challenger lunges forward, but Kellen casually sidesteps and snatches the spearhead right out of the air. His grip is so insanely tight that the weapon might as well be welded to his palm. Before the poor bastard can even process what happened, a cold blade is resting against his throat. One tiny twitch and his tournament run, along with his breathing, comes to an abrupt halt. With a bitter gulp, the opponent throws in the towel and surrenders. Kellen doesn't even stick around to watch the rest of the matches, preferring to hustle back to his quarters for some solo training. Meanwhile, Saga finishes her own match in style by hurling a volatile orb of condensed light. It blows her poor opponent straight across the arena, leaving him a battered, smoking wreck. Kellen catches the tail end of the blast and winces internally at the sheer firepower. That ridiculous nuke spell would easily crack his own defenses, though it clearly drains her dry. Saga trots over right after her victory, flashing an entirely too enthusiastic smile and offering a joint training session. Kellen instinctively hits the brakes and leans away from the enthusiasm. He bluntly shuts her down, muttering something about preferring his own company and hating roommates. Look, reader, the man values his personal bubble over awkward small talk. Back in his room, Kellen dives straight back into the grinder by practicing his breathing technique. Even with all his practice, forcing those rhythmic movements drains his stamina at an alarming rate. An hour into the grueling session, a sudden surge of raw energy floods his veins. His eyes pop open as volatile purple sparks violently erupt across his entire body. A stray arc of electricity lashes out and slices his poor bedroom furniture completely in half. His thunder guiding skill has finally hit level 2 out of nowhere, and the results are terrifying.
Strength 18, Agility 15, Constitution 19, Spirit 19. All four stats skyrocket past 15, putting his raw physical build miles ahead of any ordinary candidate.
He realizes he can now coat his physical body in live current to trigger a terrifying, overclocked state. He dubs it the Thunder Body Mode, boosting his speed and power by a solid 20%. The catch? Activating this Super Saiyan Lightning Mode burns through his calories like a furnace. For fuck's sake, the man goes from 0 to starving in 3 seconds flat. He rips open his hidden snack stash and inhales everything in sight just to stave off the gnawing void in his stomach. Spoiler alert, his bottomless pit of a metabolism laughs at his pathetic rations. Completely out of food and hours away from the mess hall, he tears apart his closet and finds 3 moldy pieces of black bread. He washes down the sawdust-textured carbs with tap water and prays for survival. After pushing through his morning training, Kellen immediately dives back into meditation to squeeze out every drop of progress. He knows his body is changing, letting him push past old limits and stretch out his daily cultivation routine. Dinner arrives, and let me tell you, hard work apparently comes with a massive culinary upgrade. A towering stack of bread, a hunk of meat, and actual dessert appear right in front of him. The delivery guy drops a casual congratulations, noting that breaking into the noble class finally earns him the Academy's VIP treatment. Kellen just blinks at the feast, realizing his brutal efforts are actually paying off. With the guard gone, Kellen demolishes every single crumb on the tray in record time. Reader, he did not pace himself, but for fuck's sake, when a man is starving, he eats.
Congratulations, host. You have gained Strength Attribute Point 1.
Day 2 of the assessment narrows the field down to the final 20 powerhouses. Today is all about random matchmaking and grueling elimination rounds before the absolute nightmare of the wheel battles tomorrow. Kellen draws the second place terror from the previous round, a lethal swordsman named Gato who once insta-killed a monster with a single swing. This isn't just a duel, it's a terrifying clash of raw stats versus pure technique. Gato takes the initiative with an aggressively tricky opening strike that threatens to shred Kellen's defense to pieces. One wrong move here and the match is basically over. Kellen throws up his guard just in time, and the resulting shockwave rattles Gato right down to his bones. Even on the defensive, Kellen's absurd strength nearly knocks Gato's weapon straight out of his hands. Flipping the script, Kellen unleashes a relentless storm of raw, brute force attacks. His swordplay might lack finesse, but who needs fancy angles when you hit like an absolute freight train? Gatto's eyes can spot every single flaw in Kellen's messy form, but his body simply can't keep up with the punishing speed and weight. His hands are going numb, and he's running out of time fast. The sheer impact finally shatters Gatto's grip, sending his weapon clattering uselessly against the stone. 3 short minutes is all it took for raw power to break elite technique. Kellen points his blade straight at his chest, declaring the match over, but a stubborn Gato tries to keep fighting anyway. Big mistake, as Kellen's sword instantly bites into his arm. The sharp sting of cold steel finally snaps Gato back to reality, forcing him to choke out a reluctant surrender. Medical staff immediately rush in to haul the battered weapon master away for urgent patch-ups. Saga wraps up her own match and immediately sprints over to shower Kellen with genuine praise. She admits that without her flight powers, she wouldn't stand a chance against him. Kellen smiles it off, but his brain is already plotting how to brutally swat flying opponents out of the sky. Turns out, patience and a single devastating counterattack are his favorite answers to airborne problems. The morning bracket wraps up with brutal efficiency, leaving 20 exhausted fighters to catch their breath. They've made it to the top 20, but the real meat grinder starts right after lunch. Kellen draws a girl named Celia in the afternoon round, whose B rank insight lets her spot weak points instantly. Too bad her physical stamina is absolute trash compared to the beasts he usually fights. He doesn't even bother with fancy footwork or secret techniques, just hammering her with brutal, simple strikes. Every single blow feels like a freight train slamming straight into her wrists. By the 13th strike, her weapon is blasted clean out of her grip, and she collapses into the dirt. She stares up at him with tearful fury, utterly humiliated by how easily she was tossed aside. She screams out a vow of vengeance for the next tournament, but Kellen doesn't even bother looking back. He knows her talent will never bridge the terrifying gulf of his own absurd growth potential. He stays to watch the next carnage unfold between the werewolf and the Batwoman. She drains his blood mid-fight to instantly heal her wounds and sap his strength, clutching a cheap victory from the jaws of defeat. Naturally, that grotesque display of vampiric cheating inspires Kellen to head straight back to his training ground. He swings his blade in the dark until midnight finally puts him out of his misery.
Congratulations, host. You have gained Agility Attribute Point 1 today.
He feels a fresh surge of lightness in his limbs the next morning, ready to tackle the final day. Honestly, getting stronger just by hitting a daily quota is cheating, and I'm totally here for it. The final day arrives, splitting the survivors into 4 combat zones. Kellen lands squarely in the highest tier zone, surrounded almost entirely by freaks wielding B rank talents or higher. Right as he's mapping out how to avoid the strongest B rank brawlers, 3 snooty nobles show up uninvited. They look like they smelled something foul just by breathing the commoner air. The local examiners trip over themselves to kiss the boots of the leading girl, practically groveling at her feet. Turns out she's a high-ranking saintess slumming it to watch the local talent show. She perks right up when the officials brag about stumbling into rare A-rank bloodlines this year, including a winged human, a vampire, and a werewolf. 3 heavy hitters in one crop is practically unheard of. Kellen tunes out the noble gossip and pulls his lottery tag for the opening bracket. Reader, the universe finally throws the poor bastard a bone. He pulls a total bye for the first round, meaning he gets to sit back with some popcorn while the other 4 beat each other bloody. Let the meat grinders do the heavy lifting for once. Saga immediately faces off against the vampire girl, while the stone giant trades blows with the B-rank enhancement brawler. The finals are officially underway, and nobody is walking away without bruises. Kellen kicks back and watches the opening matches with a smug smile. Since everyone else is going to exhaust themselves beating each other up, he's basically making a pure profit. Saga's golden-haired confidence takes a hit when she realizes her first-round opponent is the creepy Batwoman. Honestly, nobody in their right mind would want to touch that pale weirdo. They both sprout wings and take to the sky, looking like a dramatic battle between an angel and a demon. For about 5 seconds, the whole crowd is utterly captivated by the sheer aesthetic. That epic vibe shatters the second they actually start brawling with clumsy moves. Meanwhile, the Stone Man and his punch happy rival are turning this into a bloody, flesh for flesh stats contest. Gato managed to draw a bye, and the poor guy still looks traumatized from his last beating. When our paths cross, he turns his head away so fast I thought he'd snap his own neck. The slugfest drags on for an hour until the Batwoman tries to sink her teeth into Saga. She immediately spits it out and retches like she just swallowed garbage. Turns out holy magic is absolute poison to vampires and bats. Too bad my magic is lightning instead of holy, because that would have been a hilarious shortcut. Saga barely scrapes out a win, mostly because fighting during broad daylight completely crippled her opponent's dark powers. Reader, she earned every drop of that victory. After a brief half-hour break, round 2 kicks off and hands B-Man the absolute worst luck. The poor bastard is already running on empty from his last fight. He looks up, locks eyes with me, and lets out a miserable, wry smile. For fuck's sake, talk about drawing the short straw in the tournament bracket. B-Man's blood pressure spikes straight through the roof when I casually agree that he's completely screwed. He throws his initial plan to surrender right out the window. Instead of saving his remaining energy, he decides he'd rather go down swinging just to annoy me. Ah, youth, so delightfully easy to manipulate into making bad decisions. The examiner drops his arm, and B-Man charges like a rabid dog on espresso. He brings his iron rod down hard, ready to turn me into paste. Clang! My iron sword catches the blow, but the impact bites a massive notch right into the metal. Well, there goes my weapon. This thing isn't surviving the round. He rains down blow after frantic blow, completely ignoring his own stamina depletion. Honestly, watching him wail on my guard, you can almost see the delusion setting in. The guy actually convinces himself that my talent is trash and he's about to roll right over me. Reader, he did not think this through in the slightest. Kellen brings his blade down with crushing force, snapping his opponent's sword clean in half before the guy even realizes what hit him. Before the poor bastard can react, Kellen drives a heavy boot straight into his ribs, backed by a sudden surge of crackling lightning. The guy flies backward as if he got broadsided by a speeding carriage, passing out cold from the sheer intensity of the impact. Kellen sighs at how fragile his competition turned out to be, retrieving his dented blade while the referee officially calls the match. Meanwhile, the Batwoman is having an absolute nightmare of a tournament, drawing a second consecutive hard counter in this stone-bound brute. Watching from the sidelines, Kellen narrows his eyes. For fuck's sake, getting countered twice in a row? The deck is clearly stacked against her. Buried under a barrage of heavy rocks and crushing exhaustion, the poor girl finally blacks out and takes another brutal loss. Kellen catches the chief examiner flashing a smug, suspicious grin, confirming every paranoid thought he had about this rigged-ass tournament. The next round's bracket drops, and surprise, surprise, Kellen is matched against the exhausted Batwoman while the favorites coast on easy buys. Kellen steps onto the arena sand, realizing the Academy is a crooked institution run by vipers who rig everything behind the scenes. Winnie shuffles forward, dragging her feet, her back practically doubled over from sheer exhaustion as she faces another hopeless fight. She looks up with tearful eyes and a trembling voice, admitting she has the worst luck in the world and expects to lose here. Faced with an opponent about to burst into tears right before a death match, our guy stands there having zero idea how to handle female emotions. Kellen gives it to her straight, telling her that if she has any brains left, she should just forfeit right now to save her energy. Winnie blinks through her tears, completely baffled as to why her opponent is suddenly giving her solid tactical advice instead of trash talk. The referee drops his arm to signal the start of the match, leaving poor Winnie none the wiser about the corrupt web spinning around her. Winnie completely shifts into her terrifying bat form, taking to the air to secure an immediate aerial advantage. She knows her magic reserves are draining fast, meaning this fight has to end in seconds. Refusing to learn from her past mistakes, she instantly unleashes her signature Dark Moon Blade. The projectile hurtles forward with terrifying velocity, giving our boy zero time to dodge. He desperately brings his single remaining sword up to block, taking the brunt of the heavy strike. The sheer force bites a clean, ugly notch right into his blade. That single overpowered attack completely drains her stamina, leaving her panting heavily in the air. Kellen doesn't even bother rushing her, just waiting patiently down below for her next move. Up in the stands, the visiting Saintess watches the exchange with a sudden spark of genuine interest. She's impressed by how sharply contrasted his precise, disciplined combat style is. Then she hears his talent is just a C grade attribute booster, and her interest instantly flatlines. She writes him off as a pampered aristocrat whose family training is just carrying him for now. Down in the arena, Winnie realizes brute force magic isn't cutting it and goes for broke. She dives straight at Kellen like a cornered beast, intent on sinking her teeth in and draining his blood. Bad fucking call, reader. Kellen casually reaches out and snags her by the throat with lightning speed, completely cutting off her dive before she can lay a single finger on him. He hoists her light frame into the air like a rag doll and smashes her straight down into the stone floor. It's like swinging a sledgehammer, and the impact rattles her entire skeleton. Completely shell-shocked and aching all over, Winnie forgets how to even fight back. The referee steps in, looks at the trembling mess on the floor, and officially calls the match. Kellen originally plans to walk away, but seeing her lying there looking utterly defeated tugs at his conscience. He circles back and extends a hand to pull her up. She flinches at first, still trapped in a panic, and stammers out a pathetic surrender before realizing the fight is already over. Reality sets in and crushes her spirit completely. An A-grade awakened talent, and she hasn't managed to win a single damn match in this entire tournament. She trails behind him like a kicked puppy and quietly asks if she's just utterly useless. For fuck's sake, 3 losses and a girl's entire self-esteem is just thrown in the wood chipper. Kellen sighs, realizing her confidence is completely fried, and offers some rare words of comfort. He points out she just caught the worst matchmaking luck imaginable, facing top-tier opponents. As the tears clear, he finally gets a good look at her actual face underneath the gloomy aesthetic. Turns out she's just an obedient little kid who needed a pep talk, not a monster. Stepping off the arena, Kellen drops his terrifying combat aura and gives off a surprisingly gentle vibe. Winnie immediately seizes the moment, rubbing her face against his palm like an absolute stray kitten. Kellen pauses for a second, gently pulls his hand back, and tells her to rest up for the upcoming matches. Winnie nods brightly, completely over whatever heartbreak she was drowning in a minute ago. Over on the sidelines, Saga watches the whole head-touching spectacle with her eyes practically popping out of her skull. What in the actual hell are these two doing right in front of her? She power walks over to intercept them, but instead of chewing them out, she instantly pivots to praising Kellen's amazing match. Girl has zero chill when it comes to covering her tracks. Kellen tries to humbly admit he just got lucky with the tournament brackets, but Winnie chimes in to agree he's unbeatable. At that point, Kellen just gives up trying to reason with them. Saga looks straight at him and casually offers to throw their upcoming fight just so he can bag a flawless record. Reader, she is simping so hard she's willing to throw away her own tournament run. Kellen instantly shuts that idea down because the judges aren't blind, and throwing a match would invite a metric ton of trouble. Besides, he actually wants a real, honest-to-God fight. Unable to hold it in any longer, Saga tentatively asks when he and Winnie got so uncomfortably close. She's terrified of ticking him off, which makes her interrogation remarkably pathetic. When Kellen stonewalls her, Saga panics and awkwardly pivots to grilling Winnie instead, asking if she has a little crush on him. Bold strategy, let's see how that blows up in her face. Winnie answers honestly, confessing that Kellen feels gentle and makes her feel safe. Saga looks like she just swallowed a block of ice because she deeply regrets asking that question. The half-hour rest period blinks by, and karma immediately comes back for Winnie. She pulls a B-ranked male opponent while already battered from her previous beating, making her odds absolute 0. Meanwhile, it's main event time as Kellen and Saga step onto the stage for their showdown. Saga brings her full, well-preserved strength and a completely serious mindset to the platform. As the bell rings, Saga takes to the air with clean, composed movements that put Winnie's chaotic early round flying to shame. She isn't burning all her stamina on flashy, useless moves this time. Kellen's gears are spinning at maximum RPM trying to figure out a counter. He knows Saga has explosive ranged attacks, and letting her dictate the pace means he's going to get blown to pieces. Saga decides to bypass flashy spells and targets Kellen's absolute biggest weak spot, his garbage tier iron sword. She dives like a missile, packing way more speed and power than anyone else. With one brutal crash, her spear utterly shatters Kellen's sword into a shower of useless scrap metal. Kellen frowns deeply at the rubble, realizing that fighting with dollar store weapons really sucks. Surrounded by crackling electricity, Kellen bursts forward with blinding speed and slips clean past Saga's furious charge. Carried away by her own momentum, she crashes hard into the ground, exposing a massive opening in her defense. Kellen spins instantly, delivering a savage strike to her back before she can even begin to comprehend what happened. Before she can react, his steel like grip locks around her neck, leaving her with no choice but to choke out a swift surrender. The organizers are left utterly fuming in the stands, having rigged the entire bracket for her only to watch her flop instantly. Meanwhile, the visiting Saintess leans forward with a sudden spark of genuine interest, completely captivated by his ruthless efficiency. Standing victorious, Kellen glances down at his completely wrecked sword and realizes his next round is going to be a bare-knuckle nightmare. Over in the losers brackets, Winnie sits slumped and thoroughly battered after a brutal streak of total defeats. Even the werewolf watches in utter bewilderment from the stands, agonizing over the fact that the girl who beat him lost every single match. The final match arrives, and the stone man lumbers into the ring looking like he barely survived a meat grinder. Kellen, on the other hand, stands fully refreshed with plenty of mana to spare and absolute faith in his bare fists. The bell rings, and the stone man immediately triggers his earth magic to encase himself in a lumbering shell of rock. Only this time, his armor is noticeably thinner and half-baked, a clear sign that his stamina reserves are completely shot. Knowing he has this in the bag, Kellen decides to save his energy and simply dances circles around his sluggish opponent. The poor guy swings wildly at empty air, desperately trying to tag a target that refuses to stand still for 2 seconds. As his mana completely evaporates, his stone shell crumbles away into dust, leaving him utterly defenseless and ready to fall. The moment my status effect cleared, I triggered Thunder Body and turned into a living lightning bolt. I zipped right into the stone man's personal space and dropped him with a few brutal, thunderous punches. That fight was totally under my control from bell to bell. The final top 5 rankings ended up shaking out with me taking first, followed by Saga, Male B, the Stone Man, and Winnie in 5th place. The examiner walked over to hand out our prizes, starting with my reward package. I bagged the actual rank of Viscount, 500 Academy points, a magic grade weapon, and 10 intermediate stones. I got 50 basic magic stones a month as an allowance too, but hold on a second. Isn't this supposed to be a holy order? Why the hell am I getting feudal noble titles instead of a monk robe? The top 10 students get to live in the main hall from now on to hog all the best resources. Everyone else gets shipped off to whatever poor branch halls are left over. When the examiner asked what gear we wanted, I didn't hesitate for a single second. I told him straight up that I wanted a razor-sharp sword infused with lightning. He just nodded and said he understood like it was no big deal. Since it's only magic-grade gear, the Holy See has vaults stuffed with these things anyway. They led me to my new quarters, and man, my brain practically short-circuited. After living in absolute squalor and misery since I got here, walking into a 100 square meter suite felt illegal. It was basically a high-end hotel suite with 0 roommates and actual furniture that wasn't rotting away. Reader, he did not know what to do with himself in a bed that didn't smell like despair. Right as I was processing my new rich lifestyle, someone knocked on the door. I opened it to find a blonde girl who was a head shorter than me standing there, looking terrifyingly serious. She introduced herself as Milia and stated she was assigned to handle my daily needs. Yeah, right. My first instinct was that she was a spy sent to keep tabs on me. I mentally slapped a giant threat monitor label on her forehead right then and there. I decided I would never drop my guard or show my real self around her. She marched right into the inner room and immediately started making my bed. Meanwhile, I stood awkwardly in the living room, wondering if I was supposed to clap. I finally retreated to the living room and forced myself to sit down and cultivate for an hour. Honestly, keeping my guard up against a maid who just wants to fold laundry is exhausting. Another knock interrupted my peace just as I was getting into the zone. Melia answered the door and took delivery of a stack of packages dropped off by a courier. She lugged the loot right over to me so I could finally inspect my prizes. The points were already wired straight into my Viscount badge, ready to spend. I finally got my hands on a proper weapon, and let me tell you, staring at this magic grade blade had me grinning like an absolute lunatic. Alongside the sword came these intermediate magic stones, meant to supercharge my training sessions if I wore them close to my chest. Reader, I strapped that stone on and immediately fired up my thunder guiding skill to see if the hype was actually real. Holy shit, the difference was night and day. I knocked out 5 full cycles without breaking a sweat instead of my usual miserable 2.5. While I was busy discovering new levels of power, my newly hired maid Milia was finishing up her chores in the next room over. She figured out pretty quickly that working for a reasonable master meant her life wasn't going to be absolute hell for once.
Congratulations, host. You have triggered a critical hit, rewarding you with a 1 point increase in strength, agility, constitution, and spirit attributes each.
I bolted upright, dead asleep in the middle of the night because my own brain decided to drop a massive stat upgrade on me unannounced. I woke up the next morning feeling like $1 million despite getting practically zero sleep, ready to dive headfirst into academy life. King's Academy is an absolute beast of a campus, and as a Viscount, I actually had the privilege of picking out my own classes for the year. I checked my talent board out of curiosity and found out my forging talent was sitting at a ridiculous 17, while everything else flatlined. So my game plan was simple: major in swordsmanship, dabble in forging, and pick up some basic potion knowledge so I don't accidentally poison myself. Because of my Viscount rank, I didn't have to sit in massive crowded lecture halls like a peasant. I booked myself a private one-on-one instructor. I flipped through the options until I found a guy named Kegang Suo who specialized in lightning sword techniques, priced at half a day's credit per hour. The catch was that his water attribute was actually stronger than his lightning, leaving me to wonder if he was genuinely worth the steep price tag. For fuck's sake, you don't get anywhere by playing it safe, so I decided to roll the dice and see what this veteran could actually teach me. Scrolling through the instructor directory, my eyes lock onto a familiar name that screams opportunity. Quinn Ohm is sitting right there at level 39, practically custom built for my exact build. When I drop Weisha's token on the desk, the instructor's skeptical expression instantly melts away. Turns out dropping a big name has its perks, and I've just scored myself a heavyweight sponsor. He leads me into a private sparring room and demands a live demonstration of my combat capabilities. I pull out my magic tier sword, and the sheer disbelief on his face is priceless. The moment we face off, the pressure he radiates makes my lungs seize up instantly. He's like a razor sharp blade just waiting to drop, and moving an inch feels like a death sentence. Instead of panicking and throwing a sloppy swing like an amateur, I hold my ground and keep my cool. Reader, he actually showed some restraint for once instead of rushing in to get wrecked. Quinn casually flicks his wrist and launches a test strike that feels completely impossible to evade. Even holding back, his technique makes my defenses look like wet cardboard. A single upward flick sends my weapon flying across the room before I even process what happened. He immediately starts chewing me out for having the grip strength of a wet noodle. I swallow the verbal abuse, march across the room, and pick the damn sword back up. No complaining, no excuses, just back into the meat grinder for round two. Over and over again, my weapon gets batted aside like a toy while Quinn drops witty insults. My head is ringing like a church bell, but I keep my feet planted and refuse to fold. Every single time I get disarmed, I force my buzzing brain to dissect exactly how he did it. It's brutal, exhausting, and humiliating, but every failure is feeding my combat data. On the 11th exchange, Quinn goes for another routine disarm and suddenly hits a brick wall. The blade stays locked firmly in my grip, and for the first time, visible shock flashes across his face. He immediately follows up with 3 more aggressive thrusts to test if it was a fluke. I managed to hold on to the weapon through every single blow before finally losing it on the 4th. The man is genuinely dumbfounded watching me adapt in real time right before his eyes. He finally realizes why I earned that Viscount title during the assessment. Despite the ringing ears and the bruised ego, my eyes stay locked on him without a hint of self pity. You wanted visible progress, instructor? You're looking right at it. He lets out a low chuckle, acknowledging that my stubborn grit is entirely genuine. Free private tutoring with a high level master is officially underway, and my strength is about to skyrocket. With a top tier mentor in my corner and a mountain of sweat ahead of me, the gap is closing fast. Let's see how long these arrogant nobles can keep up with my cheat code growth rate. After earning a rare nod of approval, Kellen locked onto the right path and pushed his training into overdrive. In just 1 hour of brutal sparring, he transformed from a helpless target into a razor sharp learner, blocking multiple strikes. Quinn realized he had stumbled upon a true anomaly rather than a standard talent. Seeing the boy's relentless drive, a calculated urge to invest early took root in his mind for maximum future returns. Without wasting a breath, Quinn abruptly called a halt to the courtyard session and told the boy to pack his things. He led Kellen straight to his massive personal residence for private instruction. Stepping into a living room larger than his entire suite, Kellen learned he was expected to endure 3 grueling hours here every single day. A free private tutor was an absolute steal, so he agreed instantly. Following a quick 30-minute breather to stop his battered arms from twitching uncontrollably, the real torture began. Actual combat burned through stamina 10 times faster than simple drills, leaving him totally drained. Quinn laid down the law with zero hesitation, mapping out a brutal foundation of 5,000 daily sword swings. He promised to have someone watch closely to ensure not a single sloppy posture slid by. Enter Packy, a maid tasked with acting as the ultimate drill sergeant for the day. She stood off to the side with cold dedication, keeping an exact tally of every single swing. Holding a heavy practice blade made for a punishing workout long before the count even hit 500. But reader, did he quit? Not a chance. He just kept hacking away like a broken clock. By the time he crossed 3,000 reps, he looked like he had just crawled out of a swamp. He was swinging purely on muscle memory now, running on fumes and absolute stubbornness. Spotting the kid's total collapse past his physical limits, Quinn stepped in and ripped the sword away. He set the bar way too high for day one, but the kid practically forced his hand. The second the blade left his hands, Kellen's nervous system completely checked out and he tipped straight backward. Quinn caught the dead weight just in time before hauling him indoors. He lugged the heavy teenager straight to a steaming tub packed with expensive recovery herbs. It was a massive luxury handout, though Quinn definitely felt a pang of regret over the cost. Soaking in the potent green concoction felt like cheating death as the herbs went straight to work on his fried muscles. He knew this meant drowning in an even deeper favor, but hell, he wasn't going to climb out early. After an hour of soaking up every drop of medicine, he rinsed off and threw on a pair of Quinn's old hand-me-downs. They hung off his frame like a tent, but they got the job done. When Quinn told him to lie face down on the mattress, the kid had a minor panic about personal boundaries. For fuck's sake, he really hoped his new mentor wasn't swinging that way. Packy immediately arrived with a lethal sports massage that completely shattered any romantic illusions. Her brutal needs wrung out every last drop of lingering soreness while his agonized squeals echoed off the walls. After a brutal half-hour session that felt like torture, I dragged my half-dead body back to my room. I wanted to study forging next, but honestly, I couldn't even lift my arms, so magic potion class it is. I signed up for the cheapest, most overcrowded potion class available since my foundation is literally zero. No point wasting funds on a premium mentor when I just need to learn the absolute basics. The lecturer ignored my Viscount status completely, which suited me fine. I sat quietly in the back, dutifully jotting down every core principle and common herb into a pocket notebook for later. With the sun still up, I headed straight to the library to make use of my free Viscount privileges. It's the first time since landing in this ruthless world I've actually enjoyed some peaceful reading.
Congratulations, host. You have gained one physique attribute point today.
Naturally, I woke up feeling like I'd been run over by a carriage. Even with yesterday's medicated bath and massage, the sheer volume of training meant my muscles were screaming for mercy.
Four-dimensional attributes: Strength 21, Agility 17, Physique 22, Spirit 20, and level up to level 5. Reader, look at those numbers pop off. All that torture is finally paying dividends.
Luckily, Milia had a hearty breakfast waiting for me: bread, steaming meat soup, a juicy steak, and fresh fruit. Having a capable maid handle the daily grind is an absolute lifesaver. Stuffed and fueled, I marched over to Quinn's training grounds, only to find his underling, Packy, running the yard. Turns out my main instructor skipped town for a mission and won't be back for a week. King's Academy doesn't run on charity, and once a student's protection period ends, mandatory missions kick in. Fail to clear a basic task each month, and your points plummet into dangerous territory. If your points hit zero here, you don't get expelled. You get downgraded straight down to a slave. Down at the bottom of the food chain, you're treated as mere consumable property. Terrifying. That grim reality lit a fire under me, and I spent the entire week pushing past my limits. Thanks to Packy's brutal massages and my medicated baths, my gains skyrocketed faster than a crypto scam. By day 2, 5,000 sword swings were just a warm up. My body solidified into something genuinely athletic. My charm stat ticked up to 73, and my projected lifespan stretched to 78 years. Potion studies, however, stayed firmly stuck in the theoretical lane. I memorized plenty of plant appearances, but buying actual rare ingredients to brew them? Yeah, I'm not flushing cash down the toilet yet. My talent for alchemy isn't high enough to justify wasting money on failed experiments right now. Recognizing the herbs is enough of a win for today. With my stats surging and my combat foundation locking into place, I'm finally carving out a real foothold in this insane world. Let's see what else this academy throws at me. After wrapping up a quest, Quinn rushes home eager to check on Kellen's training progress. But he nearly drops his jaw when he catches the boy moving his blade with fluid, terrifying grace. It has only been a single week, yet Kellen looks like he has practiced for years. Even more shocking, he still has gas left in the tank after finishing his brutal drills. Kellen politely credits the mysterious medicinal baths for his fast gains. Even the notoriously harsh Quinn can't help dropping his guard to praise the kid's terrifying talent. Naturally, the mentor and student decide to test these new limits in a serious spar. Kellen grips his lightning flash sword tightly and dives right into the furious melee. Despite his massive growth, Kellen still can't crack Quinn's defense. After 16 relentless exchanges, his weapon gets blasted right out of his grip. Quinn is utterly thrilled by how fast the boy's flaws are disappearing mid-fight. Reader, he's basically watching a cheat code evolve in real time. An hour of non-stop punishment is enough to knock Kellen out cold. Quinn simply hoists the exhausted kid over his shoulder and hauls him inside to recover. Recovered from her rough past, Saga joins the potionology class looking like a completely different person. Her dull complexion is gone, replaced by a radiant, youthful glow. Her eyes instantly lock onto Kellen walking into the room. She has spent the entire week hunting for him across the academy like a bloodhound on a fresh scent. She eagerly slides over to catch up on everything she missed over the past 7 days. She brags about her new life of good food and comfortable living while Kellen plays along. The lecture abruptly starts as the instructor stomps into the room. Saga shuts her mouth immediately, having already learned the hard way not to test these professors. 10 minutes into the lecture, Saga's brain completely short circuits. Without any basic education, listening to this dry jargon is basically medieval torture. Meanwhile, Kellen channels his inner nerd and takes diligent notes on the dry material. Honestly, watching him absorb this boring garbage with a straight face is its own kind of miracle. Realizing she has zero hope of understanding the lecture, Saga turns her desk-bound vigil into a staring contest. Watching Kellen work is the only thing keeping her awake. Kellen definitely notices her staring into his soul, but decides to ignore it until the bell rings. Good grief, the boy has the patience of a saint. The brutal hour finally drags to a close, sparing everyone from the teacher's agonizing drone. Kellen packs up his notes, wondering if he should just burn his textbook and study in the library instead. Another tedious magic potion lecture drones on, repeating the exact same drivel as last time. Kellen decides he has better things to do than waste another hour here. When he invites Saga to tag along to the library, she practically invents a fake emergency on the spot. Turns out reading books is her absolute kryptonite. Left to his own devices, Kellen hunkers down in the archives for a massive week of grind. No distractions, just pure, uninterrupted academic suffering.
A full week of intense training and stat allocation pays off with solid boosts across the board. His growth rate is slowing down, but he's finally cracking new milestones. He hits level 7, realizing this world's leveling system scales entirely off total internal magic volume rather than individual stats.
Even with Quinn heavily throttling his own stats to match, Kellen fights him to a dead draw. The kid's overall power output is legitimately terrifying now. Quinn starts sweating bullets, realizing he's about to run out of things to teach this monster. More importantly, funding Kellen's insane resource consumption is going to be a logistical nightmare. He considers pushing for top-tier academy sponsorship, but remembers Kellen's measly C-grade talent. In the shadow of the colossal Holy See, that's just not enough to get VIP treatment. Meanwhile, reality checks hit hard as Kellen watches his intermediate magic stones vanish into thin air. At this rate, his stash won't even survive the month. Basic magic stones are issued later, but the conversion rate is an absolute scam. 100 basic stones for one intermediate? Fuck right off with those macro transactions. Realizing he needs to hustle, Callan eyes the student task system as a way out. Turns out you can pre-complete mandatory chores during your protection period to dodge future penalties. With 500 reward points still burning a hole in his pocket, he decides to bypass grinding low-level grunt work for now. Better to dump those points straight into raw upgrades. It is finally time to put his absurd forging talent to actual use. After constantly running out of decent weapons, picking up blacksmithing feels like a mandatory side quest. He skips potion class entirely, burns a class hour, and hires a grumpy intermediate blacksmith as a private tutor. The guy looks at Kellen like he's paying to fail. The blacksmith bluntly lectures him on how blacksmithing is a second-rate dead end compared to runes or alchemy. Kellen just shrugs and says he's doing it for fun, which breaks the old man's brain. Given his monstrous strength stat, the heavy hammer feels like a feather in his grip. He heats the ore and brings the hammer down, ready to smash through the impurities. The chunky instructor watches me bungle the early steps. My heating is sloppy and my hammer strikes are totally chaotic, prompting an immediate intervention. He steps in to demonstrate the proper technique. Even with his awkward frame, his hammer rings out like a musical instrument, stripping away impurities with surgical precision. I study his grip, force, and rhythm like my life depends on it. A sudden spark of understanding hits me, though I need to test my theory right now. I take the hammer back and strike the ore. To the old man's absolute shock, my very first hit produces that exact same crisp musical chime. He literally cannot process what he is seeing. Learning a complex smithing technique just by watching a single demonstration breaks every rule he knows. Blow by blow, I clear out the surface impurities with terrifying accuracy. The master's stern expression melts into profound astonishment as he realizes I am no hopeless case. Moving to the next phase, he demonstrates how to handle deep impurities by repeatedly heating, folding, and hammering the metal. I swallow the complex furnace instructions whole, half understanding the delicate temperature timing before stepping up for my turn. I mimic his exact timing, heating the iron to a blazing red glow and clamping it out with zero hesitation. For 2 solid hours, I hammer away until every last hidden impurity vanishes. Reader, the man is starting to think he accidentally rolled a cheat code. Gang Lassuo is entirely speechless, questioning whether everything he knows about blacksmithing is a lie. You simply do not master this craft overnight. I breeze through shaping and quenching after watching just one quick walkthrough. 4 hours later, a rough iron sword lies completed on the workbench. Teaching me has gone from a chore to an absolute joy. He practically begs me to promise I will keep forging in the future, terrified this talent will walk out the door. I politely turn down his unspoken request for more daily hours, citing other commitments and a strict 4-hour evening limit. Look at me, setting healthy boundaries.
Charm plus one.
A charm boost? Yeah, that is cute, but I'd much rather pad my stats and luck. A pretty face isn't going to stop a monster's blade, so back to the grind tomorrow. Milia stares across the breakfast table, utterly convinced her master is suddenly growing a lot more handsome for no logical reason. Back in the Academy's forge, Kellen relentlessly interrogates his instructor until he's wrung every drop of knowledge out of the poor guy.
System notification. Host has gained one strength attribute point for today's hard work.
When a jealous advanced blacksmith tries to gatekeep his craft, Kellen simply drops him after an hour and moves on to the next teacher. For half a month, this relentless cycle of rotating mentors and brutal personal cultivation pushes all his physical stats through the roof. Quinn watches in absolute awe as Kellen sits amid surging electrical currents, preparing to push his thunder technique to a whole new level. When he finally opens his eyes, miniature bolts of lightning dance across his pupils, signaling a massive breakthrough.
System notification. Thunder guiding skill reaches level 3, upgrading every single base attribute and expanding his magic reserves.
Quinn strides over the moment the surge settles to check on his terrifyingly fast-growing student. Cue Packy sprinting in like an oversized waiter with a massive trough of roasted meat and milk because leveling up burns calories like a blast furnace. The boy devours most of the feast in minutes, leaving Quinn and Packy standing there wishing they had grabbed a plate themselves. No time for a food coma because Quinn immediately drags him out to the training yard to spar and test out those fresh upgrades. Kellen initiates the assault with the lightning flash sword technique, unleashing a blinding wall of razor-sharp motion. Quinn blocks the barrage just in time, but the sheer velocity of the strikes forces him onto the defensive right away. Packy watches from the sidelines with his heart in his throat, terrified one of them is about to lop a limb off. A split-second lapse in concentration costs Quinn dearly as Kellen's blade breaches his guard, proving the student is closing the gap for real. In a flash of sheer instinct, Quinn unleashes his full combat power, throwing a devastating punch right at Kellen. But instead of being flattened, Kellen calmly blocks the strike without taking a single scratch. Left completely speechless, Quinn realizes his sparring partner just casually shrugged off an attack that should have broken him. The old master can only marvel at how terrifyingly fast this kid is growing. Dismissing him for the day, Quinn watches the young prodigy walk away and feels a strange pang of melancholy. He knows their paths will soon diverge, cutting short a remarkably fun mentorship. Mind clearing out after a solid meal and a quick afternoon nap, Kellen heads straight toward his scheduled forging class. He expects a routine day, completely unaware of the headache waiting for him. His walk gets abruptly cut short by a familiar face sporting a brand new Marquise rank badge on her chest. Without doing any of the brutal grunt work, the former saintess has somehow bought or bullied her way to the top. Reader, he instantly regrets making eye contact. Dealing with entitled royalty is exhausting enough, but dealing with this specific psychopath is a fast track to an early grave. She snaps her fingers and barks an order, demanding he approach like a common stray dog. Kellen curses his terrible luck under his breath, realizing he has zero room to argue against someone who can squash him like a bug. She tilts her head, studying him closely while racking her brain until memory finally clicks into place. Oh, right, she remembers this annoying little nobody from before. Forcing the most agreeable expression he can muster, Kellen plays the humble servant to perfection. Years of eating dirt taught him that swallowing your pride is a lot better than getting buried. Instead of turning him into a footstool, she unexpectedly flips him a heavy pouch stuffed with valuable demonic beast stones as a monthly allowance. Holy shit, 10 intermediate demonic beast stones a month? Forget self-respect. This woman isn't a spoiled tyrant at all. She is an absolute saintly goddess walking among mortals. All internal complaints evaporate instantly as Kellen pledges his absolute loyalty to his new sugar mommy. Honestly, who cares about a little humiliation when the pay is this ridiculously good? Having secured her newest errand boy, she demands he follow her immediately to cure her afternoon boredom. Kellen scrambles to keep up, acting as her personal shadow. She leads him straight to a massive, thunderous coliseum nestled deep within the church grounds. Kellen blinks in sheer disbelief as the terrifying purpose of the building finally dawns on him. Staff members trip over themselves to welcome the elite noblewoman and secure her a prime viewing box. She immediately demands they throw her new pet into the meat grinder. She casually orders him to step into the fighting pit and slaughter a demonic beast for her amusement. Kellen points at himself, wondering how the hell a first-month student survived 5 minutes with this lunatic. When the arrogant saintess tried to force me into a suicide mission at the arena, I flatly refused her unhinged orders. Naturally, her immediate response was to lash out at me with a heavy leather whip. I caught her weapon straight out of the air, the friction burning my palm raw. Honestly, what is wrong with these supposed holy figures, resorting to immediate violence the second she gets checked? She tried to yank it back, but she neglected one tiny detail. Without her fancy S rank talent activated, her physical strength is absolute garbage. She was completely anchored in my grasp. I gave it a sudden release, sending her crashing unceremoniously onto the dusty floor. Well, reader, he did not think this through. I had officially signed my own death warrant with a spoiled brat. Humiliated in public, she shrieked at her lackeys to tear me apart. 3 Class A talent holders swarmed me at once, thinking they could easily put the supposed weakling in his place. Too bad I've been grinding stats while they were busy polishing their titles. I didn't hold back an ounce, instantly activating my thunder body to clear the board. One brutal kick to the stomach each was all it took to break their ribs and drop them wailing onto the dirt. They didn't even land a single hit before they were out of commission. She stared at the groaning heap of elite classmates with sheer terror in her eyes. The math wasn't adding up in her spoiled brain. How was the C rank scrub folding her muscles so easily? I walked right up to her frozen form and made my stance crystal clear. I wanted zero part in her petty games, but if she wanted war, I was more than happy to give her a front row seat. Before things could escalate further, the arena manager sprinted over to play peacemaker. He definitely didn't want a high-profile bloodbath ruining his venue's pristine reputation. Pride blinded her common sense completely, and she waved him away with a furious shout. She refused to lose face, choosing instead to double down and teach me a lesson the hard way. A breathtaking, terrifying phantom of a celestial angel bloomed behind her back. That was her signature S rank talent, Angel Soul, stepping out to play. For fuck's sake, do angels just hand out divine favor to every entitled psychopath on the block? The sheer audacity of this world never fails to exhaust me. Sensing the catastrophic collateral damage incoming, the manager scrambled to erect a heavy containment barrier. At least the innocent bystanders wouldn't get vaporized in the crossfire. The 2.5 meter angel phantom lunged straight at me with terrifying, overwhelming velocity. The sheer pressure alone felt like a freight train barreling down my throat. I managed to intercept the strike with my sword, but the raw kinetic force still launched me across the arena. Breaking her toys is fun and all, but fighting an actual god-tier summon is a real pain in the ass. Kellen takes a devastating blow that sends him crashing straight into a massive stone pillar. A thin trail of blood leaks from his lip as he struggles to comprehend the sheer gap in power. He thought A rank abilities were the ceiling, but S rank talent breaks every rule in the book. Still, noticing how badly his opponent is huffing, he realizes the pampered lady has terrible stamina. Sacred Heart tries to puff out her chest and gloat about her overwhelming might, but her heavy gasping ruins the intimidating effect. For fuck's sake, you're supposed to look cool while monologuing. To her absolute horror, Kellen drags his battered body right back up to his feet. She expected him to stay down like a beaten dog, and her anger flares into a cold, murderous rage. Screaming in fury, she commands her radiant summoned phantom to charge again. The crowd watches with glassy-eyed adoration, ready to sell their souls just to touch the divine projection. Kellen ignores the agony burning through every fiber of his abused muscles. Drawing on a lifetime of enduring raw suffering, he funnels nearly all his remaining magic straight into his sword. Lightning and divine light violently collide in a deafening shockwave that blinds every spectator in the stadium. When the blinding glare finally clears, the angel phantom is completely gone. The untouchable Saintess is left spitting blood and sprawled across the dirt floor like a pathetic stray. Serves the arrogant princess right for picking a fight she couldn't finish. Kellen limps his way toward the exit doors while the arena manager watches in absolute dread. The Saintess just got beaten half to death on his watch, and his career is officially over. The panicking manager barks orders to seize the culprit immediately. Two oversized guards tackle Kellen to the ground, pinning him tight because he's running on empty magic reserves. Even with his face pressed hard against the cold stone, Kellen refuses to look defeated and glares straight up at the manager with pure defiance. Surprisingly, the manager's anger evaporates, replaced by grudging admiration for the kid's sheer guts. Defeating the Saintess takes a level of raw grit you just can't teach. Word reaches the high-ranking elites and cardinals running the nearby academy that their precious Saintess took a beating. The men in charge sit there blinking in sheer disbelief. The Pope quickly pulls himself together and demands the kid's file, choking on his drink when he reads the report. A C-rank nobody just humiliated their holiest asset. The manager hurries back to his office to hold the teenager securely while waiting for higher orders. Meanwhile, the higher-ups prepare to bring the audacious fighter in for a direct audience. Locked away and waiting for whatever punishment the Academy Pope dishes out next, Kellen refuses to break. Reader, he survived this far. He isn't about to bow down now. Instead of the brutal beating I braced for, my captor casually offers me a mystery pill and insists it will make the pain go away. I swallow the damn thing anyway because if they wanted me dead, they wouldn't waste expensive medicine on a corpse. Before I can even catch my breath, a squad of angry enforcers kicks the door wide open to haul me away. I wave off their grabby hands and strut out on my own 2 feet, refusing to look like a helpless captive. Meanwhile, the bruised holy maiden finally wakes up in a luxury suite and immediately plots my violent demise. The Pope treats her tantrum like a proud father watching a toddler throw a fit over a broken toy. The supreme leader of the church glides down the corridor to inspect the punk who humiliated his favorite golden child. I stare straight up like a frightened toddler because this holy bastard is built like a literal oak tree. With a casual wave of his manicured hand, the glowing ropes binding my wrists just vanish into thin air. Instead of demanding my head on a spike, he actually apologizes for the Saintess and praises my combat skills. For fuck's sake, is every adult in this academy a reasonable human being? Where's the toxic family drama I grew up with? He cheerfully promises me a hefty reward for beating some actual work ethic into his arrogant subordinate. Of course, the other shoe has to drop eventually, and the holy man's smile turns dangerously calculating. He cuts straight through my polite excuses and demands to know the exact nature of my absurdly powerful talent. I hesitate for a second, wondering how much of my menu-driven life I am actually allowed to confess. I finally admit that my cheat lets me inspect my own hidden stats, lightning affinity, and weapon proficiencies. Hearing about my unique pathfinding talent, the Pope immediately grasps its hidden power. It might not boost raw combat strength, but it points straight to perfection. He knows history's greatest legends often lacked S-rank gifts, winning instead through sheer honed mastery. With the right push, my talent could rival the best of them. Publicly backing me right now would invite fierce backlash and pure resentment from Sacred Heart. The old man realizes he has to play this game entirely in the shadows. The Pope tells me he will invest limited resources, forcing me to grind for my own growth. Honestly, I respect the hustle. It's the most rational move a king-level boss can make. He hands me a sacred token loaded with 1,000 years of class instruction hours. Holy hell, I can hire any elite legend in history to tutor me now for free. Deep down, the Pope wants to test pampered genius Sacred Heart against a self-made fighter like me. He is literally using me as a motivational chew toy to fix his own school policy. He tosses me a healing vial to fix my battered body before Sacred Heart wakes up for round 2. Reader, the man practically told me to keep kicking his favorite student's ass. I pocket the loot and head straight back to my quarters, my mind racing a mile a minute. The Pope wants me to constantly mentally break Sacred Heart to keep him hungry. Back at the room, Milia drops her jaw and nearly faints seeing my bloody state. She looks ready to cry, asking what kind of death match I just crawled out of. I casually wave it off, claiming a few structural injuries are totally normal during heavy training. Let's be real, trauma dumping on my maid isn't going to solve my problems. She hesitates like a nervous wreck, questioning if I'm even allowed to submerge open wounds in water. For fuck's sake, Milia, I'm not made of glass. Dismissing her worries, I lock the door and check out the Pope's parting gift. 10 pristine white pills sit in my hand, radiating dense, potent energy. I swallow just one pill and tuck the remaining 9 away for a rainy day or a massive payday. Honestly, selling these would probably buy me a small kingdom. A chilling, minty wave floods my veins, and my shredded skin literally scabs over in seconds. The scabs flake off like dust, leaving behind completely untouched white skin. Holy sea medicine is straight up cheating, because I feel brand new in under a minute. I slide into the hot bathwater, finally letting my guard down. Outside, Amelia keeps pacing the floor like an anxious guard dog waiting for an explosion. Ah, the joys of having someone actually care if you survive the night. I get home from a full day in the field feeling like something scraped off a boot. Every muscle has filed a complaint. For once, I decide I have earned the right to sit down and let somebody else do the work. Milia comes in to help and turns roughly the color of a stop sign. She is a few years older than me and has clearly never been this close to a peer in her life, and her entire composure evaporates on the spot. Then she notices something that stops her cold. She watched me come home soaked in blood a few hours ago, and now there is not a single cut anywhere on me. The maths is not complicated, and I can watch her do it. If none of that blood was mine, then all of it belonged to somebody else. She decides very quickly not to ask. She gets on with it anyway, because that is the job. I shut my eyes and let 3 days of accumulated exhaustion drain straight out of my spine. And then, somewhere behind me, she has an idea. My eyes are closed, my back is turned. As far as she is concerned, she is operating in a total surveillance blind spot. She is wrong. My eyes open at precisely the wrong moment, and I catch the entire performance in my peripheral vision. Reader, she is sniffing me. I decide mercy is the better play and pretend I saw nothing, because calling her out right now would end her where she sits. I just ask why she stopped. She says she was washing the towel. She was not washing the towel. Neither of us acknowledges this, and she scrubs the rest of my back like her life depends on it, which honestly, it might. Later, she hides under her blanket and replays the whole catastrophe on a loop, trying to work out what exactly possessed her. Then she lands on a plan, and it is genuinely a bit terrifying. If she takes care of me well enough, thoroughly enough, relentlessly enough, I will simply never be able to function without her. Meanwhile, the system chimes in with the day's delivery.
Congratulations, host. Today you have gained luck attribute point times 1.
Luck again. I will take it, because luck is the one stat that quietly rewrites your whole life while you are not looking. But the morning brings something much bigger. Every attribute has jumped 2 to 3 points overnight, and my level has climbed to 13. I know exactly why. Yesterday, I fought something that genuinely could have finished me, and nothing on this earth grows a person faster than nearly not surviving. Breakfast arrives plated like it is going in a gallery, and one small compliment makes Milia's entire week. But on my way back that evening, Saga is waiting on the path, and she has very obviously come looking for me. Kellen has undergone a crazy glow up since our last check in, looking like an absolute main character straight out of a studio's promotional art. His entire aura radiates a cool, unbothered confidence that instantly turns heads across the academy grounds. Even Saga is completely flustered trying to approach him, acting like a terrified rookie despite swearing she'd keep her cool. She awkwardly invites him to join her and Winnie on an upcoming student combat assignment. Hearing it's a goblin eradication task involving 100 targets, Kellen figures it's a safe enough bet for a maiden voyage. He agrees to tag along for tomorrow's departure, leaving Saga internally celebrating like she won the lottery. Before prepping for the field, Kellen checks in with Quinn to give a heads up about his very first mission. Quinn nods in approval, fully acknowledging that the kid's ridiculous stats put him miles ahead of normal peers. Out of nowhere, Quinn drops the ultimate survival hack and suggests Kellen bag himself a rich sugar mommy to fund his cultivation. Because, let's be real, sustaining this freakish growth rate on a budget is absolute suffering. Our boy stands there blinking in slow motion, wondering if his mentor's brain just short circuited mid sentence. Reader, he definitely did not expect a lecture on gold digging today. Quinn quickly waves it off with a bitter sigh, admitting his own past failures made him blurt out some pathetic nonsense. But honestly, the man speaks from hard earned, broke ass experience. Kellen stays completely grounded and thanks Quinn for all the expensive medicinal baths that fueled his rise. He's well aware those rare herbs cost a small fortune, and he isn't about to forget who backed him. With the mentorship chat wrapped up, Kellen heads straight to the Academy's commercial district to burn some points. He's practically sitting on a pile of untouched wealth and needs to gear up properly before heading out. He smartly bypasses the sketchy black market stalls run by fellow students, where buyer beware is the golden rule. No thanks, I choose life over a counterfeit potion that explodes in my backpack. Instead, he heads right for the heavily regulated official shop where refunds actually exist if your gear turns out to be garbage. Quality control is expensive, but peace of mind is priceless. A sharp-eyed young clerk spots the Viscount medal pinned to his chest and immediately sprints over to offer VIP service. Never underestimate the sheer motivating power of institutional flex. Learning that he's a freshman top scorer heading out to farm goblins, she pivots straight to expert sales mode. She zeroes in on high-margin consumable items tailored for a clean, painless victory. She pulls out a signature energy potion, promising it'll wipe away travel fatigue instantly for just a single Academy point. It's basically high-end magical Red Bull, priced exclusively for the wealthy elite. She uncorks the tester bottle and lets him catch a single whiff of the sweet, invigorating aroma floating in the air. Instantly, the morning's physical fatigue melts away from his system like magic. Convinced by the sample, Kellen decides to splurge and stock up on a proper adventurer's kit without blinking an eye. Time to show those goblins what happens when pay to win meets local wildlife. Stocking up on essential supplies is always a wise move before a dangerous outing. Stacy practically plays me like a fiddle, effortlessly convincing me to drop over 100 points on her highly recommended gear. I walk away with energizing energy drafts, basic healing potions for sudden injuries, and heavy-duty insect repellent powder. Honestly, every single item she sold me feels genuinely useful for survival out there. With my shopping done, I head straight over to the forging classroom for my scheduled lesson. Master Tuasola is already waiting for me, ready to break down the frustrating mysteries of weapon crafting. I immediately pick his brain about why my lightning attribute ore constantly explodes into fiery chaos. He calmly points out that my earth powder ratio is way off, leading to either unstable reactions or ruined metal quality. He warns me that trying to salvage botched lightning weapons is a total waste of rare materials and yields garbage results anyway. You have to treat every single hammer swing as your absolute final chance. After a grueling 3-hour deep dive into smithing theory, I call it a night to rest up. Reader, thank fuck I didn't try to forge anything explosive right before bed, or I'd be sleeping in a smoking crater.
Host has gained 1 point in physique attribute.
That quiet overnight boost pushes my total physique stat up to 46. Slowly but surely, my body is turning into a sturdy brick wall. Bright and early the next morning, I knock out my official Holy See exit paperwork at the main gates. Stepping outside, the morning air hits differently, feeling remarkably fresh and crisp for once. The massive city surrounding the holy grounds is entirely populated by Academy students and young locals. Commoners keep their eyes glued to the cobblestones the second a Viscount wanders into view. It strikes me as genuinely bizarre that I haven't spotted a single slave anywhere on these streets. Given the brutal hierarchy here, you'd expect forced laborers to be everywhere you look. Before I can overthink the socio-economic structure of the academy, Saga and the crew flag me down. Gato and the stone giant Devon are locked in, their gazes noticeably sharper after my recent rank 1 lucky streak. Even with past tension hanging in the air, we've got a mission tomorrow morning, so nobody's looking to start a brawl. Saga takes charge, confirming everyone is ready to march out of the gates together. As we walk toward the perimeter, Saga drops some mind-blowing lore on our current location. Turns out this sprawling settlement is Holy Light City, the beating heart of 12 massive allied sectors. She casually mentions that the island we are standing on isn't an island at all, but an entire undiscovered continent. Seriously, the sheer scale of King's Academy breaks my brain. Governments from every empire operate out of this mega academy, yet they haven't even conquered a fraction of the landmass. High mana density means wild magical beasts breed out of control, demanding regular culling expeditions. Our next assignment isn't a monster-filled wilderness. Saga tells me we're heading to a troubled farming village right outside Holy Light City to clear out a rampaging horde of goblins. Winnie catches up to our group, looking like a literal white radish. Despite getting proper meals lately, her limbs remain dangerously thin and frail. Seeing her desperately skinny legs, I pull a fresh piece of bread from my pack and hand it to her. She looks at me like I've just handed her the keys to the kingdom. She takes the food with both hands and nibbles it like a starving puppy. Honestly, patting her head right now feels less like meeting a teammate and more like raising a daughter. When I ask why she's still a skeleton despite eating well, she admits her terrifying talent forces her to drink blood for nutrients, something she absolutely hates doing. It turns out powerful talents are basically a rigged curse. Once you cross into B grade and above, the universe always demands a hefty payment for your gifts. Curious, I ask Saga if her winged people heritage has any flaws. She stares right into my soul and admits her entire race suffers from a stubborn, hardwired mental obsession. Meanwhile, Devin is losing his absolute mind over here. The guy's sulking because the only two girls in our squad are paying attention to me instead of his majestic presence. Ever since he started getting 3 square meals a day, his primitive urges kicked into overdrive. He thinks his newfound Holy See status makes him every woman's dream catch. He's decided that locking down a high potential gifted woman is his fast track to power. Reader, he picked the two most emotionally oblivious targets in the entire continent. Unable to stand being ignored any longer, Devin struts over and barges right into our conversation like a lost puppy begging to be bullied. Over in the corner, Gato is completely ignoring the high school drama. He's entirely transfixed by his spear, grinding his weapon master talent until the air actually hisses. Completely oblivious to the fact that nobody gives a damn, Devin turns his sights on me. He demands a public spar to prove his superiority over my measly C-grade talent. Does this clown seriously forget what happened at the assessment? His brilliant B-grade talent turns him into a glorified walking punching bag with the turning speed of a glacier. Gato immediately snaps out of his trance and lights up at the word spar, dying to see how much my combat skills have actually leveled up since last month. I give Devin a cold, flat nod and accept his little challenge. Let's see if a month of extra rations actually taught this walking boulder how to fight. Devin is practically vibrating with sheer arrogance, convinced he's about to utterly humiliate Kellen right in front of Winnie and Saga. Kellen's gaze turns ice cold, realizing the absolute necessity of stamping out this arrogant threat before he poisons the whole team. Sensing a real brawl brewing, the rest of the crew calmly scatters to secure the perimeter and watch the upcoming beatdown unfold. Without any warning, Devin triggers his ability, ballooning into a lumbering stone titan with thick rocky armor coating his massive frame. Instead of flashing lightning or drawing a sword, Kellen casually hoists a heavy iron rod like he's about to beat a stubborn rug. The moment Devin rushes in, Kellen's iron rod slams into his shoulder with bone-shattering force, instantly driving the giant to one knee. A sickening crunch rings out as a follow-up blow caves into Devin's stony helmet, rattling his brain and sending him spiraling into a daze. Reader, he absolutely fed him a knuckle sandwich. Kellen chains a merciless series of backhand and forehand rod strikes straight to the jaw. Winnie and the crew stare in sheer disbelief, wondering when a friendly training spar turned into an execution-style clinic. Devin's magic fails entirely as he faceplants hard into the dirt, completely unconscious with a bloody, unrecognizable face. Kellen blinks down at the wreckage, realizing those fancy rock bricks offered basically zero actual protection against a good bonk. With zero sympathy to spare, Winnie and Saga haul the broken slug back home while the rest of the team presses forward. Gato watches Kellen with burning eyes, realizing the terrifying power gap has only widened, though his warrior spirit refuses to quit. The crew reaches their destination before nightfall, greeted by a dismal, battered village surrounded by ruined fences and locked doors. Famished villagers finally crack open their doors, revealing sunken, malnourished faces ground down by endless monster raids and brutal taxes. The local village chief dashes over to welcome them, offering up the biggest lodge just as the threat of nocturnal beast attacks looms. A sudden infant cry shatters the evening calm from deep within the chief's home. The village head immediately excuses himself to tend to his child, leaving his young daughter in charge. Kellen watches the girl lead the way, his mind drifting to the bizarre nature of the King's Academy. Having existed for barely 40 years, the place raises baffling questions about its native-born citizens. Their assigned quarters are humble but surprisingly spotless, showing genuine care from the hosts. Having endured plenty of hardship, the crew finds the clean space more than satisfactory. A knock breaks the quiet as Saga, Winnie, and Gato crowd into his doorway with a pragmatic proposal. They decide to bunk together so they can react instantly when the inevitable raid strikes. Winnie wonders aloud whether the incoming goblins will pose any real threat to their group. Kellen points out that high ambient mana in this academy zone drastically increases mutation rates. Most people would shake with nerves ahead of a monster onslaught, but Kellen feels a rush of pure excitement. For fuck's sake, the man's got a screw loose, practically vibrating to test his blade. Night falls thick over the settlement before a chaotic uproar shatters the dark. Hordes of foul-smelling, stunted goblins pour through the alleys alongside massive, towering figures. Kellen bellows an order to light the torches, cutting through the panic. The villagers instantly scramble to ignite wall lanterns and ready their flames, finally piercing the heavy gloom. The moment the monsters creep into the firelight, Kellen draws his lightning flash sword. With a single brutal swipe, he cleaves a shrieking goblin cleanly in two. Gato joins the fray with his heavy spear, skewering a pair of charging pests like cuts of meat on a skewer. The guys aren't messing around tonight, making absolute short work of the vanguard. Winnie weaponizes the darkness, turning into a ghostly blur that dances through the goblin ranks. Each pass of her shadow claims another screaming life with cold efficiency. Saga hangs back just enough to rain precise explosive spells across the lanes. A month of hard training pays off as her magic blasts multiple monsters to pieces in fiery concussions. Not content to watch, Kellen activates Thunder Body to maximize his pace. His glowing blade slices through the horde like a hot knife through tofu, butchering them at a terrifying speed. The slaughter draws unwanted attention as three hulking mutant giant goblins zero in on the crew. Towering over their wretched kin, these beasts possess terrifying physical presence. One towering brute lunges at Kellen with shocking agility, but Kellen meets it head on with a vicious full power swing. His lightning sword bites hard into the monster's muscular neck. The blade cuts deep into the bone before halting against the beast's unnatural density. Kellen wrenches his sword free as a massive geyser of blood erupts into the night air. That monstrous giant goblin let out an ear-shattering shriek that practically rattled our teeth. But I didn't waste a single second letting it recover from the pain. My lightning flash sword went straight through its eye and out the back of its head, silencing the screech instantly. I left it on the dirt, knowing better than to trust a beast's final twitch. Meanwhile, Gato tried taking down another brute, but his stats just weren't high enough. The goblin's massive club swatted his spear away, tearing the skin right off his palm. Winnie watched in pure horror as the club raised for a fatal downward swing, thinking she was about to witness a gruesome execution right then and there. I hurled my lightning sword across the clearing just in time, pinning the beast's throat before it could finish Gato off. Gato stared at the corpse, realizing he owed his life to the guy he'd been trying to surpass. Reader, he definitely didn't expect to be saved by his main rival today. The last brute went totally rabid, charging straight at me while emitting a god-awful putrid stench from its maw. Seriously, a breath mint wouldn't have killed it. My weapon was stuck across the clearing, so I had to handle this naked-handed while my magic was drained down to just keeping my thunder body active. Following Quinn's old combat advice, I decided to fight dirty and booted it square in the crotch. Never argue with a tactic that works, folks. The pain completely fried its tiny brain, turning its moves into wild, telegraphed tantrums. It was basically asking to be punched. With my thunder enhanced stats, I drove my fist straight into its liver like a hydraulic press. The giant folded instantly and hit its knees. I didn't let up for a second, systematically smashing its eyes, throat, and heart in a brutal slow motion execution. The surrounding mob of regular goblins watched the carnage and collectively decided they wanted zero parts of this, turning tail to run for the hills. With the main threat down, I barked at the others to chase the cowards and find their damn nest. Nothing like a good goblin hunt to build character. I yanked my blade free and made sure every single giant stayed dead with a few parting chops. Can't be too careful with magical beasts. The local villagers finally crept out, staring at the goblin corpses before breaking down in tears of pure relief. Their nightmare was finally over. The village chief stands at the road watching a group of teenagers walk away, and what he feels is mostly relief. He had been ready to pick up a blade and go out there with us. He never got the chance. When we first turned up, he had written us off. Too young, obviously the newest intake, nothing about us suggesting we could fix a problem that had been eating his village alive. Then he watched it happen, and it was over so fast he never moved. Stepping in would only have got him in the way. I knock back a stamina potion and a mana potion in 2 swallows and feel the tank refill. We are not going home. We are going to find where these things live. So we follow them at an unhurried pace, right to the tree line. The raid on the village was never the point. The nest is the point. A forest at night is genuinely lethal ground, thick with things that hunt, and the four of us walk straight into it without slowing down. Great plan. No notes. I drain one more mana potion before we go deeper. Something tells me what is waiting down there is a serious step up from what we just cleared, and that thought does not scare me even slightly. That is the part I do not want to look at too closely. I am not tired. I am not shaken. I am excited, and some quiet corner of my brain is filing that away as a problem for later. We track them to a hole in the hillside that runs down under the earth. The passage is far wider than it should be, built for something considerably bigger than the ones we killed. Everybody stops. The entrance sits there like an open mouth, and the dark inside it looks ready to swallow anything stupid enough to walk in. Saga is shaking from head to foot. She has a real terror of places like this, and she is standing there quietly, bracing to walk in anyway, rather than admit it out loud. I turn round to put it to a vote and catch the state she is in before she can bury it. So I reframe the whole thing. Somebody should stay on watch. Her abilities are wrong for a cave, and she has no night advantages. All true, all beside the point, and it lets her keep her dignity intact. She promises to come running if we shout. Then our torchlight disappears into the tunnel, and she is standing completely alone in a very large, very quiet forest. Inside, the torches barely help. The air is thick and stale and genuinely foul, the kind of smell that gets into your clothes, and it is hard to imagine anything choosing to live down here. Then Winnie grabs us both and we freeze. What the torchlight finds in that chamber is the worst thing any of us have seen, and it answers every question we had about what these creatures have been taking from the villages out here. Nobody says a word. Nobody needs to. Stepping deeper into the foul cavern, Kellen is hit by a wave of sickening horror. The mutilated bodies of young captive girls lie scattered everywhere, their cruel treatment instantly igniting a blazing, blinding fury in his chest. He fights down the urge to scream, remembering Quinn's hard-earned lesson. Anger isn't meant to cloud your judgment. It's a weapon you have to master, shape, and drive straight into your enemy's throat. Gato and Winnie are right beside him, their faces locked in grim, shared hatred. Seeing their own kind butchered like cattle crosses a line that even hardened mercenaries refuse to ignore. With a voice like grinding ice, Kellen orders the group to push further into the abyss. Every single step forward only reveals worse horrors, stoking the fire in their veins until it's ready to erupt. A scouting goblin shrieks and leaps straight for Kellen's face, but he catches the creature out of midair. His grip is like a hydraulic press, instantly cracking bone and crushing the beast's skull. With a blinding flash of blue lightning, the trapped goblin literally explodes into a fine red mist. The rest of the green skinned freaks scramble backward, realizing they just cornered an apex predator. Activating his thunder body, Kellen dives headfirst into the horde like a buzzsaw. Limbs, blood, and screaming heads fly in every direction as he carves a bloody pathway through the living hell. Winnie and Gato aren't about to let him have all the fun, unleashing a frenzied slaughter of their own. Reader, watching them vent their collective trauma on these little monsters is honestly therapeutic. Then a shrill, ear-piercing shriek cuts through the noise of battle, bringing everyone to a screeching halt. This ain't your average fodder. A 2-meter tall mutated freak wearing armor and holding a massive spear just stepped up. The bastard closes the gap with terrifying speed, instantly targeting Gato with a devastating overhead swing. Gato throws up his spear to block, but the sheer kinetic force is completely overwhelming. The impact drives Gato straight down into the dirt on bloody, shattered knees. His magical spear bends into a dangerous arc, and before he can even blink, his legs snap clean under the pressure. Before the elite goblin can finish Gato off, Kellen fires a black moonblade across the cavern. The dark arc shears straight through the beast's leather armor, taking half its right shoulder with it. Before the creature can even scream, Kellen is already in its personal space, driving his blade straight at its throat. The sword just grazes the windpipe, opening up a geyser of foul, dark blood. Furious, the mutated beast launches a reckless counterattack with its heavy spear. Kellen blocks the blow, but the sheer force rattles his teeth and leaves his stance completely shaken. Realizing he's dealing with a heavy hitter, Kellen floods his veins with electrical current once again. He parries the frantic spear thrusts, finds a tiny opening, and drives his glowing sword straight through the monster's chest. Electricity arcs through the beast's carcass until it twitches one last time and goes completely still. With the boss down, Kellen checks on Gato's mangled leg before helping Winnie wipe out the remaining cowards. Kellen trades blows with a shockingly intelligent boss monster. This brute fights with lethal martial arts precision, pushing our hero to his absolute limits. Meanwhile, Gato takes a brutal hit from behind while fighting off the grunts. The warrior is bleeding out, his injured leg turning this skirmish into a desperate struggle. Winnie steps in just in time to cover his blind spot. She carves through the attackers with lethal precision, making sure her strikes don't accidentally clip Kellen. The main duel intensifies as Kellen revels in the thrill of a true life-or-death battle. The goblin's weapon is buckling under the pressure, but its blind rage keeps it going. Kellen's swordsmanship sharpens with every passing second, fueled by a sword art tied to his guiding skill. While the hero stays ice cold, his opponent loses all reason. 3 minutes later, the monster's defenses crack. Kellen thrusts his blade directly through its heart, halting its rampage once and for all. He follows up with a finishing strike to the throat, sparing the head to preserve the valuable alchemy materials. After all, that corpse is practically walking loot. Sweeping the remaining area, Kellen discovers a cluster of little goblins hiding in the shadows. He immediately recalls a certain famous anime protagonist's philosophy. Reader, he did not hesitate for a single second. Good goblins only stay dead, and he clears out the nest with zero remorse. Deep inside the cave, they uncover the captive girls who suffered unspeakable horrors. Most are completely catatonic, staring blankly ahead in total despair. Kellen offers a gentle lifeline, asking if they can manage to stand. Two of the captives break down in heavy tears upon realizing rescue has finally arrived. The party marches out into the night air carrying their heavy haul. They've got the boss corpse, the loot, and 6 survivors who desperately need medical attention. Saga waits anxiously outside among fallen beast carcasses she took care of during watch. Seeing Kellen and the others alive instantly lifts the heavy weight off her chest. Then she gets a good look at Gato, and let's just say he looks like he lost a fight with a lawnmower. The man is practically leaking from every seam. Since traveling at night is a death sentence in this condition, they set up camp right there. Gato accepts his fate, knowing Kellen literally just saved his skin. Noticing the survivors trembling in terror near the cave, Kellen kindly reassures them that every single monster is dead. Safe to say, they can finally get some sleep. I didn't waste time arguing with Gato about who deserved the healing items more. I uncorked my primary healing potion and poured the glowing liquid straight across his torn flesh. With Gato bandaged and stabilized, I turned my attention to the girls. Having nothing else to offer, I dug into my pack and handed them some dry white bread to steady their stomachs. One girl grabbed the food and devoured a few frantic bites before her ruined body rejected it entirely. She threw up the meager meal onto the dirt, overwhelmed by her shattered reality. The sheer weight of her captivity, torture, and utter despair broke her completely right there in the dirt. She wept uncontrollably, questioning why her entire life had been nothing but misery. I cut through her sobbing with a cold warning, telling her to shut her mouth before her noise drew bloodthirsty beasts out of the dark. Tears don't solve crisis situations. She froze, stunned by my bluntness, but beneath my rough tone, she caught a faint echo of my own past suffering. She realized I knew exactly what a truly bitter life looked like. Nobody dared close their eyes for the rest of that endless, miserable night. We just sat there in the dark, waiting for dawn to break over the trees.
Host, you have gained Agility Attribute Point 1.
The moment the sun finally crested the horizon, we dragged ourselves out of that cursed forest. Reader, surviving the wilderness on pure spite should honestly count as a combat skill. By noon, we limped back into the village square to a heartbreaking scene. Families swarmed forward, some collapsing in tears of joy while others wept over empty spaces. The village chief rushed over, choking back tears as he thanked us for bringing their children home. Then he spotted Gato's brutal injuries and quickly offered his own house for shelter. I didn't turn down the offer of a roof over my head. The second I got inside and washed off the grime, I passed out cold from sheer exhaustion. I woke up a full day later, feeling like I'd been run over by a carriage. Checking my status panel, I found that my constitution and strength had both permanently increased by 1. Saga and the rest of the crew were already up and moving around. Even Gato had been shoved into a makeshift wheelchair, though he'd clearly be out of commission for a while. The chief brought us a hot midday meal and reported that the goblin corpses had already been properly processed. For once, things were actually going according to plan. I told him to keep the small fry since their dried bodies had medicinal trade value for the locals. We only took the giant and mutated goblin corpses with us, because business is business. The village chief lays out a massive feast of roast meat and vegetables to thank our heroes, despite how poor the settlement clearly is. While Saga and the others hesitate to touch the villagers' scarce food, Kellen dives right in because turning down genuine hospitality is rude. He needs the calories anyway, and buying into their heartfelt gratitude makes everyone feel better about cleaning out their pantry. After stuffing his face, Kellen politely declines the chief's pleas to rest longer and insists they have to get moving back to the city. Villagers line the dirt road to wave goodbye, watching the donkey cart roll away alongside a bed of piled up goblin corpses. Kellen kicks back on the cart like he's on a luxury cruise, completely unfazed by the rotting green corpses stacked right beside his legs. Winnie stares blankly at the dead monsters, haunted by how close Gato came to dying back in that miserable cave. When she asks if they'll be risking their necks like this forever, Kellen casually confirms that this is just Tuesday in their line of work. Determined not to let anyone else die on her watch, she announces she's going to get strong enough to carry the entire squad. Kellen chuckles at the kid's bravado, and honestly, reader, it's pretty adorable watching her try to act like the big tough protector. Thanks to Kellen's credentials, they breeze right past the city gates and get dropped off at the side entrance of the massive church. They drag their ugly loot over to the church recycling desk, greeted by an undead-looking clerk who moves with zero life in his eyes. The guy pulls out a nasty blade and starts carving up the corpses with terrifying professional speed, checking for quality magic crystals. He evaluates the warrior's crystal as evolving quality and totals everything up to an impressive 190 points. They head over to cash in their main mission reward, bringing their total up to a sweet 390 points to split among the four. Gato immediately insists that Kellen take 85% of the loot since he carried the whole damn operation on his back. After a ridiculous amount of bickering over their loot split, Kellen finally puts his foot down and claims the lion's share of the reward points. He heads straight back to his modest home, where Melia greets him with genuine joy and immediately gets to work making him comfortable. The sheer relief of being home hits him like a freight train, and he crashes onto his mattress without a second thought. Within an hour, a hot meal is waiting for him, and every bite reminds him why he fights so hard to protect this peaceful life. He tops off the evening with a long, hot soak that washes away the lingering aches of battle and sends him straight back to sleep.
Congratulations, host. You have gained Charm Attribute Point 1.
The next morning rolls around early, and Kellen is right back at Quinn's courtyard to pick up his usual routine of basic swordsmanship. Quinn listens closely as Kellen casually drops the news that he tangoed with a goblin warrior and three massive brutes. The old instructor has to fight the urge to strip him down and inspect every inch for wounds, knowing just how lethal those monsters really are. Watching Kellen carve through his drills with mounting precision, Quinn realizes something sobering about his own limits as a mentor. Quinn stops the session dead in its tracks and drops the bombshell that his basic lessons have finally hit a brick wall. Instead of holding him back, Quinn is ready to hand him off to a much harsher, specialized teacher who can actually match his terrifying growth. Kellen doesn't even blink at the mention of expensive tuition, proving once again that he's willing to pay whatever price is required to get stronger. Naturally, reader, he completely ignores the sensible advice to take the day off and marches straight toward a completely different kind of grind. He rents out a dirt-cheap basement forge for 2 miserable points a day, ready to test his mettle at the anvil. With all his theoretical questions answered, it is finally time to hammer out his very first weapon from scratch.
First forging fine weapons. Thanks to the Pixel Loss Temperature Reward, my journey into smithing begins with a nice little system bonus.
I stepped into a crowded multi-person forging room where 20 furnaces blasted heat like an open oven, making even breathing feel like hard labor. The facility only provides the basic brick hearths and hammers, meaning I had to haul in my own quality charcoal and pricey 5-point iron ore. I tossed a premium chunk of gray iron ore right into the fiery depths to heat, confident that my raw talent would pull this off. Once it reached the exact temperature I wanted, I clamped it out and brought the heavy hammer down to aggressively beat out every last impurity. The crisp, rhythmic clanging instantly drew a crowd of slack-jawed apprentices who ditched their own work to watch a masterclass for free. Let them gawk. Crafting top-tier gear demands absolute, uninterrupted focus, because one slip in the intricate heating process ruins everything. After 3 grueling cycles of heating and precise strikes, I finally purged every speck of slag from the metal, prepping it for the next phase. Next came the secret weapon, a chunk of black thunder ironstone, crackling with faint elemental static, meant to give the blade some real bite. I sprinkled a dash of stabilization powder into the furnace to keep the volatile stone from literally blowing up in my face. Good precaution. With the second ore heated, I hammered it at a blistering pace, my muscle memory kicking in as my forging proficiency skyrocketed. I dropped both metals into a sealed iron can and left them to bake for half an hour, letting the two distinct elements fuse into one. I popped the glowing can open with a clean tap of a wedge before the heat faded, revealing a perfectly blended metallic core ready for shaping. Working fast, I hammered out the silhouette of a single-handed sword, my absolute favorite weapon type, in just a quarter of an hour flat. Now came the terrifying part, the water quench. 1 second too long or short, and this entire masterwork goes straight into the trash. I pulled it out to find faint lightning arcs dancing across a flawless edge. Reader, my first damn forge was a certified masterpiece. Crafting a weapon usually takes a dozen miserable tries for beginners, but I nailed a fine-grade blade on my very first swing like a total natural. Since I didn't have time to run a retail stall, I marched straight down to the local recycling station to cash out my hard work. The cynical clerk took one look at my noble badge and my brand new sword, his boredom instantly vanishing into absolute disbelief. Usually, this dump only gets mangled scrap metal, so he practically droomed over my pristine craftsmanship before making a solid offer. He offered me 75 points on the spot, which blew my mind and made me realize side hustles actually pay insanely well. Subtracting 13 points for raw materials and rentals left me with a sweet 63-point net profit for a single day of work.
Congratulations, host. You have gained one mental attribute point today.
The next morning, I met up with Old Man Quinn early to secure my introduction to a legendary combat master. Quinn looked genuinely depressed walking me there, probably mourning the fact that I was about to belong to someone else's training roster. We navigated deeper into the labyrinthine holy grounds until he rapped respectfully on a secluded wooden portal. A commanding voice bade us enter, revealing a massive bare room lined with naked blades and a terrifying youth standing dead center. The guy radiated so much lethal pressure he felt less like a person and more like a human-shaped meat grinder ready to snap. Quinn bowed his head in deep reverence, nervously introducing me before beating a hasty retreat out the door. Those eerie purple eyes stared straight through my soul, making me feel naked and utterly vulnerable under his microscopic gaze. He asked if I wanted lightning attribute swordplay, and when he told me to attack, I didn't hesitate for a single damn second. I charged straight at him with pure murder in my heart, and instead of flinching, the master raised 2 fingers to counter my strike. 2 fingers stopping right against my forehead left me staring straight into the abyss of my own mortality. Cold sweat poured down my face as my muscles locked completely in sheer, paralyzed terror. Wilton hovered over me, shaking his head at my lack of finishing power. Even with my solid fundamentals, my master expected a hell of a lot more from a top prospect. I knew my sword talent still lagged miles behind the true monsters at King's Academy, but fuck letting that gap stay wide forever, because I was coming for the top of this entire school. I marched straight into the library to hunt down a lightning attribute manual. Paying 5 admission points just to get onto the second floor better be worth the dent in my wallet. 19 options lay before me, split across one-handed, two-handed, and dual blades. I quickly whittled them down to 3 serious contenders that actually fit my fighting style. I chose the high-difficulty Thunderclap swordplay for its massive explosive potential and deadly ceiling. Reader, he picked the hardest fucking path available, because mediocrity is for cowards. Plunking down 150 points for an elite tier manual hurt my soul. Still, buying advanced techniques at Academy discounts was the single best perk of this joint. Back home, Melia greeted me early while happily experimenting with fresh fruit wines from our weekly deliveries. The poor girl just looked for any excuse to spend extra time around me. I brushed past her with a quick nod, telling her to keep doing her thing while I locked myself away to grind. Zero time to waste when there were peaks left to climb. Miles away, the Pope was being briefed on my D-rank missions and rising goblin slaying body count. The old bastard seemed genuinely amused by how fast I was climbing the ranks. He looked towards Sacred Heart's private training room, where the S-rank prodigy was grinding herself to the bone. Her terrifying growth rate meant she would crush me flat if our paths crossed. Naturally, the Pope couldn't let his favorite entertainment get ruined by a one-sided slaughter. If Sacred Heart lost her motivation too fast, where is the fun in that? He decided it was time to actively meddle in my progress to spice things up. Because nothing says good management like artificially tampering with a teenager's life expectancy for sport. Back at home, I had already spent 4 grueling hours swinging until my arms felt like lead. Even with total comprehension of the manual, executing the Thunderclap swordplay was brutal. The moves were sluggish, stubborn, and completely refusing to click into an introductory level. If I showed up tomorrow empty-handed, Wilton's disappointment would cut deeper than any blade. So I gripped the hilt tighter and forced my shredded muscles back into motion for another round. Sleep was for the weak when there was a mountain of expectations waiting to be broken.
I pushed myself through a brutal grind from dawn until dusk, swinging my blade until my clothes were completely drenched in sweat. Every muscle burned, but I refused to stop for a single second. Congratulations, host. You have gained one Sword Dao talent attribute point today.
Alright, so it literally still boils down to grinding stat points. For fuck's sake, at least my luck finally paid off on something useful for once instead of giving me a useless perk. Drawn by a fierce hunger, I walked over to find Amelia waiting with a hot, freshly prepared meal. She always kept food ready, watching me eat with a dedication that bordered on wifely devotion. After a quick meal and a brief rest, I chugged a stamina potion straight to the head. No time to sleep when there are levels to grind and opponents to crush. Hours bled into the dead of night as I hacked away in the empty courtyard. My sloppy swings gradually morphed into broad, destructive arcs that felt heavy and unstoppable.
Thunderclap Swordplay Level 1.
I didn't even bother stopping to rest after the breakthrough, keeping the momentum going all the way until sunrise. My body was trashed, but the sheer adrenaline kept me wide awake. Milia had my bathwater drawn and breakfast waiting the second I finally stepped out of the yard. Soaking in that tub felt like absolute heaven after an all-nighter of pure suffering. I cleaned up, changed into fresh clothes, and headed straight for the academy. Even if Master Wilton didn't care about appearances, showing up looking like a bum is just bad form. I pushed open the heavy door to find Master Wilton standing dead center in the room, like he hadn't moved an inch since yesterday. His gaze could probably cut glass. We traded blows immediately, and just like yesterday, I got folded in half in a single exchange. My fancy new sword technique didn't do shit against his bare finger. He watched me run through the thunderclap form and actually offered a nod of approval. Apparently, mastering it in a day meant I wasn't a total embarrassment to look at. He praised my physical foundation but dropped a bomb about my actual sword comprehension. According to him, I'm just swinging for stats without feeling the actual weapon in my hand. And then, right as I was leaning in for the profound, life changing advice, the man just waved his hand and told me class was dismissed. Are you actually kidding me right now? I stood there blinking in absolute disbelief while he acted like a 3 lesson package deal meant nothing. Reader, he definitely didn't plan on holding my hand through this.